Hey, it is good to be back, chat. Welcome in. It is week 4 recap show. Appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out with me. I see a few of you guys already in here. Good to see the old faithfuls back. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate you being here at the beginning. Let me turn this down a little bit. I am so sorry that I had to pause or had to delay our show from last night. I was really looking forward to it, but some things kind of got in the way yesterday, which is fine. Stuff happens, right? So it's fine. We're back. Gives me an extra day to do a little bit more work. Hopefully we're a little bit more dialed in to what happened in the last week, and really think that it's actually going to help. It would be nice to be able to do like it would be nice to be able to do like a Wednesday show. The issue is that by the time Wednesday comes around, everybody's already on to the next week. So I'd love to have those extra couple of hours, but working on a couple of things to be able to do it to be able to get everything in order, make it a little bit easier, and have a little bit more information for you guys. So really excited about what we've got this week. Week 4, man, a lot of surprises. Picks didn't go so well last week. Let's just be upfront about it, right? I haven't actually gone back and counted them, but we finished somewhere just below 500, I believe. So not the greatest of weeks. Had a few surprises in there, a few that I should have known better. But yeah, it's overall it was a really good week. Let me get rid of this music. Overall, it was a really good week for learning. That's the good thing about being wrong, is whenever I'm wrong, I learn a lot more than whenever I'm right. Because if I'm right, I just go, okay, got that one right. Let's move on. Let's move to the next one. And I don't really go back and research it as much. So learned a lot last week. Hopefully we can take what we learned and move it onto this week. So welcome, everybody. Welcome in. It is the Week 4 recap show. My name is Joe. You probably know me as NFLosophy or NFL Philosophy. Thank you all for coming in, tuning in. Really appreciate the follows. Jato, Backseat Streamer, and Bike. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Welcome in. Really looking forward to tonight. We'll hit every game, and we're going to try to do this a little bit more on time frame. A couple little quick, programming notes. So this week I decided to, I forgot lights. What an idiot, man. I am just not on my game. Missed one day. And then all of a sudden, it's like, I just forgot how to stream and all the things that I was doing. Give me 1 second here. All right. What color you guys want tonight? You want red? Let's blue. Red? No? Green. Let's go green. We haven't gone green yet. Green sounds good. Green works. Green's a good color for us. All right. So week 5, Gabe, welcome in. You can laugh at me all you want. As long as you're laughing, that's all that matters. As long as you're entertained, right? There's an old Colin Cowherd thing that says you either need to be good or you need to be interesting. Hopefully I'm at least interesting, because last week was not good. So we'll find out kind of how we do this week. So for me, week 4, week 5 are two of the biggest weeks of the year, because it really starts to separate the good teams, the real teams, from the bad teams. And we saw that. We got to see a couple of teams that it looked like, hey, their schedule really helped them out. And when they actually went and faced some good teams, it wasn't so great, and they didn't really show up to play. A couple, context things in there as well as to why a couple of those teams lost. But overall, we're pretty dialed in on a lot of these teams, and a lot of these games. I think just calling them against the spread, it's tough, because you never know. Like, you can't predict a guy like Teddy Bridgewater getting a concussion and, at the end of the first half and then not playing the second half. Like, that's basically going to tank any chance you got if you went with the Broncos. Not that would have changed the outcome of that particular game, but it's just, the NFL's hard, man. And that's how we do it. There was somebody I remember last year, somebody coming in saying, "Oh, I went like 11-4 one week and like 12-4 the next week. And then one week I went like 8-8 or something, or 8-9, or no, 7-9, something like that." And somebody was like, oh, you're under 50% this week. And I'm like, dude, just where are your picks? Show me your picks. Like, if you picked every game for last week, then let's talk about it. I'm happy to admit where I was wrong. But until until you end up with, until somebody comes in and shows me their picks, like, until you're stepping into the arena, don't jump in. Gabe Fangio at his presser the next day. We'll talk about that. That was interesting. I mean, you can be mad all you want. There's a philosophy in the NFL. See how I work that in there? There's a philosophy in the NFL that I want to talk about, like that an old, I think it was an old To saying, Terrell Owens saying that I love that applies to that particular situation. We'll talk about it a little bit. Crossover, welcome back. True, you never know. Sometimes the Jets beat the Titans. Well, I mean, that wasn't really that hard to see, to be quite honest. I think seeing the Jets beat Giants beat New Orleans was probably a little harder to see. But um, without AJ Brown and Julio Jones, like the Titans it kind of felt like you Jets might have a shot. And even without their two of their three biggest weapons, I mean, that's tough to it's tough to pull out a win that way. I mean, it just changes the whole. For them, it doesn't change the dynamic of their offense because they have Derrick Henry, who's just inhuman. Like he's from another planet. He's like AP on steroids, which is crazy. But yeah, kicking for a field goal for the tie and losing was funny. I mean, listen, we'll get into coach's decision making tonight as well. Specifically, we'll get into that around the Bucks Pats game as well. So, like I said, learned a lot week 4. Super excited as week 5 comes because again, like these are the weeks where NFL teams begin to really come to focus and we get to see and understand them a little bit more. And they really we really start to get some definition about these teams, right? And find out who they really are. And that's important to me because we're going to be able to really look at these teams going forward and say, okay, based on where they're at right now and the injuries that they have, like, is this a good team? Is this a bad team? We didn't know that the first 3 or 4 weeks. We're kind of rolling the dice with a bunch of these picks. Got a little bit lucky in what was it, week 3? Week 3, we went 12-4 on picks. I don't think I was keeping track of picks before then. Maybe you can go back and watch the VODs and see how we did for week 1, week 2. I don't think week 1 was good, but I think week 2 was better, and then week 3 was even better. And last week we regressed a little bit, just like Josh Allen. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, so you know what? Let's go ahead and get into it. We're gonna try to keep this 2.5 hours tonight, which means we're gonna have to get through these games a lot faster. Speed through a couple of the easy early games or the games that probably nobody cares about as much. But let's get after it. All right, so let's talk about Jacksonville, Cincinnati. So, man, where to start? I think. I will say I was surprised to see like Urban Meyer really grinded it out this week. Like he had a really good game going, and that first half was really a bit of a shocker. He really had his finger on the pulse early on, but then ultimately he made some bad decisions that everyone watched and definitely took the L in the end. And that was on Saturday, and that's not even talking about Thursday. That's not even the game yet. But we should probably talk about the game because that's what you're here for. Seriously, though, like we probably won't spend a lot of time on this one because we talked about it on the Sunday matchup show. Thursday night before the game, we really kind of nailed that call, right? We said Jags needed to get Trevor some easy throws instead of asking him to just carry the offense all by himself. And they did that. And they needed to couple that decision making and that game planning with getting James Robinson going, and they did that as well. And they were a little fortunate in the beginning, but that got them up to a 14-0 lead. And then the Bengals called back. Joe Burrow proved why. I love him so much. He dropped 25 of 32, 348, 2 TDs for a stat line. I mean, the kid is just phenomenal. And as long as he has a semblance of an offensive line, he's going to look like a really good QB. Like he should be looking at he should be somewhere in the top 10. Like he should be pushing that boundary at this point. As long as they can keep him upright. And the problem is he has to overcome Zach Taylor play calling. And yet he still is able to shine through it. So big kudos to him. The kid is going to be, I don't want to give anybody like press that they shouldn't have, but oh, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's get into our screen. Why are we here? Yeah, there we go. All right. So yeah, so there was a person on Twitter who decided that they should tweet out that Trevor Lawrence is going to be a superstar and Joe Burrow is never going to be anything but a middling quarterback. And sometimes you shouldn't press send on tweets. Sometimes you should delete them before you ever even send them. And that was one of those tweets, because if you're paying attention, there's no reason to think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be any better than Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow looks like an absolute stud and is going to be a franchise quarterback for a very, 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 very long time. So don't press send all the time, kids. But anyways, it's just, there's like Skip Bayless level of trolling, it feels like. And the sad thing is that like he was an intern for a certain grading company or grading website out there, and they probably are very ashamed to see someone tweet something like that with their initials in his bio. So, Gabe, has Trevor created an offense? Has Trevor had a creative offense OC since high school? I mean, it was good enough in Clemson, right? But he was also surrounded by a ton of athletes, which was super, super helpful. Darrell Bevell certainly isn't a creative offensive coordinator, and Urban doesn't seem to be the one running that offense right now. So no, not really. I mean, Urban may be given some direction, but Urban also had a freaking quote today where they said, let me find this. Let me find this out. Let's see. Urban basically said, "I don't coach." Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to find it in time, but basically, someone asked him like, like, are you gonna, what are you gonna do? What are your players gonna do? How are you gonna, how are they gonna respond to this? And how are they gonna get focused on the field? And he said, "Well, that's not up to me. That's up to the players." And it's like, wait, what? What do you mean? You mean you're saying you're not actually a coach? Like you don't actually do anything? So there's just a lot of weird stuff going on with the whole Urban Meyer situation. So it would be surprising if he finished out the season based on what's going on. Like he's on a short leash. One more screw up and he's out. Which isn't the worst thing. He can start recruiting season early, because he is definitely, if he gets fired this season, he is definitely going back to college. So, I said last week on the pregame show, like I need to see signs of them starting to kind of figure it out. But we saw that in the first half. But then once the second half started, they were like, "Oh no, we're going right back to what got us those losses before." So not really seeing a whole lot going on, except there were signs of life. I'll give them that. So they showed signs of life in the first half. They showed that they still can't close out a game. Poor Urban Meyer was so distraught after the game that he needed to go out and have a few drinks at his bar in Columbus. By the way, it's really weird that a coach does not fly back or ride back on the bus with the team. That is probably the weirdest part of the entire stage. It's like him being out at a bar and getting grinded on. Like that's not I mean, okay, it happens, but he made a choice not to get back on that plane with the team. And I'm baffled by that, because the fact that I've never seen or heard of a coach not riding back with the team. And I know that if from sitting on those team buses and on those team planes, if the head coach decided not to go back with the team, we're talking about the players, right? Like everybody's talking about the players. Everybody's saying, "Oh, the players aren't really, they have no respect for him," and all this stuff. And I'm going, what about the rest of his coaching staff? Because his coaching staff is going, "What the hell, dude? Like, why? Like the players are saying that too. We all know that, but the coaches, his coaching staff is saying that too. He's lost all trust in that building as far as I'm concerned. I don't see how he's maintaining any amount of trust with ownership, with his coaching staff, with the players. Like, I don't know how you come back from that. I mean, he's going to try, right? And here's the thing. The beauty of the NFL, whenever it comes to teams and to how we view them, winning cures everything, right? Like I mean, if you're winning, you can get away with just about anything. So if he goes out and wins football games with Jacksonville Jaguars, nobody's going to care if he gets grinded on every single weekend, other than his wife. So it's just the reality of it. People are they care about whether you win or lose. And if you're losing, they're going to pick everything apart. And if you're winning, they're going to say, oh, sure, you did what you were supposed to do. Good job. Whatever you're doing, keep doing that. Right. So we're gonna have to wait on and see what's up with the Jags. They didn't look like the worst team in the NFL this week. I will say that much. Gabe, it's amazing Bieniemy can't get a head coaching in the NFL, but Meyer with his history of off the field did. So here we've talked about this a little bit, and I can't remember I think it was on stream. It might have been like the first show ever that we did. But Bieniemy in Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich, like those guys who were coordinators in the Super Bowl, they didn't get jobs because they were in the Super Bowl. Like NFL teams and NFL owners don't want to wait for Super Bowl coordinators to come out of it, because think of it like this. They want to know early on, who their head coach is going to be. And most likely it's going to be from a playoff team that lost in the first or second round. Because once you start getting into the NFC AFC championship game and then the Super Bowl, now all of a sudden they've got to wait an extra week or 3 weeks for that particular coach. And now they're looking at if there's another team that's also going after that coach, they could potentially miss on a guy that they would have liked anyways, and wait for, say, like a Todd Bowles, for example, or an Eric Bieniemy. Like, if the Jags had said, "Hey, we want Bieniemy, we're gonna wait until after the Super Bowl." If he says, "No, I'm gonna stay here," or "No, I'm actually going to a different team," then now all of a sudden they're without a coach, and everybody else is under contract. And the other problem with that is once you hire that guy, he's got to hire all of his assistants. And while there is a rule in the NFL that coordinators have to be allowed to interview for head coaching positions, that's it. That's as far as it extends. Like if a coordinator is asked by a team to say, "Hey, we want you to come interview as a head coach with us," his current team can't say no. It's not allowed. However, if a position coach is asked to be hired as an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, his original team can block that if they want to. Now, it's not good form, but teams will do it because they'll say, "Hey, we've got a great plan for you." You probably hear it in your job. "Hey, we've got a great plan for you. You're going to move up the ladder if you stick around. We have big plans for you. We think you're fantastic. We're planning on moving you up, and you're going to get a promotion and all of that type of stuff," right? That same stuff happens within the walls of an NFL team. So, a lot of teams don't like to wait, and that's why guys like Bieniemy and Todd Bowles didn't really get much in terms of sniffs last season. And I've talked about it before. It's a benefit to the teams that make the Super Bowl, because it means they're more likely to be able to keep their coordinators. So, and that's a super important part. We haven't talked about how important coordinators are, but coordinators are, and we'll talk about it another night, but coordinators are just as important as a head coach, as important, if not more important in a lot of situations. So, let's see. He has the money to fly back to Columbus on Friday. Exactly. Go back with your team and then fly back. He just decided he wanted to get away. So, it's why the McDaniel stuff pissed everybody off in Indy. Yeah, exactly. Like, you could end up in a situation like that. And it's not really, that's not normal, right? Like, it's fairly rare that stuff like that happens. It's definitely rare that stuff like that happens, but it does happen. And you don't want to put yourself in that situation. And especially you can convince yourself that any person that you bring in is going to be good enough, because you wouldn't bring them in if you didn't think that they had the chance. If they weren't potentially the guy, and then once they come in, then all of a sudden you've talked to them and they become the guy. And I don't know if you guys know this, but something like 85 to 90% of hires are the first person brought in. And it's not necessarily because that's who they targeted first. It's just primacy bias. The first thing you see and the first person you interview is the one that sticks out. Unless there's just a massive difference between those particular coaches. So yeah, so we'll see. I really think the big thing about this game is the Bengals on defense are a lot better than I thought. The defensive line is solid, but not spectacular. Though that interior does look like that interior looks pretty damn fierce. Not gonna lie. I'm looking forward to watching more of DJ Reader. He jumped out in this particular game. The safeties have played really well all season, and the cornerbacks are good enough. They may have to figure out a way to protect Eli Apple, or he could potentially be a matchup problem against good teams. Like he could be a negative matchup for the Bengals. So overall, the Bengals feel like an 8-9 team. They're going to beat some teams that they probably shouldn't, especially whenever they figure out how to let it fly, while also being able to protect him. The wide receiver core is legit. Like they have a top 10 unit between Chase, Boyd, and Higgins. Like they're legit, and they can beat you in a multitude of ways. Chase is a complete receiver. Boyd can get open just about any way. Higgins is a great vertical threat. Like, and the other thing is you guys know that I love Joe Mixon as an all around back, and he's going to continue to be really, really good. Reader was good in Houston, if I recall. Yeah, like I'm surprised by how good he's looked in Cincinnati. I liked him in Houston, but I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be really good for Cincinnati, or he has been so far. CJ Uzoma showed up on Thursday night, and if they could get him going, the offensive skill positions of the Bengals are terrific. Like they're set there for a few years. The problem is the O-line. I will say the O-line has played better the last two games, but that's also against Jacksonville, who we know isn't terrific, and then Pittsburgh, who didn't have Watt and Highsmith. And so I think it's still an O-line that's going to limit them pretty heavily down the stretch. But I'm also open to thinking it's not catastrophically bad and is going to hinder Joe Burrow throughout, like just completely inhibit his ability to be productive. And I think Burrow's savvy enough in the pocket to make it work. He and Taylor just need to get on the same page, and Taylor needs to help him out by not leaving him out to dry against good pass rushes. When they face good pass rushes, that's where Taylor is going to be the guy to help design some things to keep Burrow clean. And then Burrow's got to get rid of it too, right? Like if Taylor designs something that is a quick throw and Burrow holds onto it, then that's Burrow's fault. That's not Taylor's fault. So yeah, really, really, I mean, that turned out to be a really good Thursday night game. They've all pretty much been good. I think there was one that wasn't. Even the Washington and New York Giants game was pretty good. So yeah, so I think the Bengals, I don't think the Bengals are 3-1. Now look, I think the Bengals play, I want to say Houston this week. Let's see. I'm looking to see. The Bengals are first in the AFC North. Who thought that? Oh, Bengals play Green Bay this week. That's what it is. So, the Bengals play Green Bay this week. Then they play Detroit in 2 weeks. So, they could end up being 4-2 after 6 weeks, but they skirted by against Minnesota. They beat a bad Chicago team. Or they lost to a bad Chicago team. They beat a bad Pittsburgh team without Alex Highsmith, and then they beat Jacksonville. So they haven't done anything really impressive so far other than play with and beat Minnesota, and Minnesota probably should have won that game. So Green Bay will be a really good test for them this week. Fascinated to see how that goes. Fascinated to see if Green Bay's defense is good or bad, because I still feel like they're very up in the air at this point. Gabe, I remember Peyton having like third string, but never having issues. Oh, third string left tackle, but never having issues because he knew how to work around. Yeah, and that's part of it. And we'll talk about that a little bit with just whenever we get to the Chicago Bears game and Justin Fields, because I think it's important to understand where your gaps in your protection is. Gold Glover, yeah, our D is bad. Oh, dude. I mean, wait, Gold Glover, who's your team? Detroit? Are you? You must be a Lions fan if you're saying your D is that bad. If your defense is that bad. All right, so that's all we'll talk about. Jacksonville, Cincinnati. Let's see. What should we go to next? Green Bay. Yeah, so that's the thing is your defense looked all right 2 weeks ago. Now against San Francisco. Now I'm just curious if San Francisco is just bad, like their offense is just struggling, and that was more of it. Arizona Rams. Hey, I'll tell you what, Gabe. We'll get to that one next. Let's do Houston Buffalo because let's knock that one out of the way. I feel like we should knock out Washington Atlanta, because neither of those are games that I'm very particularly interested in. So let's do Houston Buffalo. So Buffalo continues to dominate bad opponents. This version of Houston with Davis Mills at quarterback is the Houston that we expected at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure they can win a game with Mills at quarterback, but when Tyrod comes back, they could at least be competitive with bad teams again. And so I think that's one of those things where we're just going to have to wait and see, but they're not. Houston's still not good. Even with Tyrod, they're still not good. But with Davis Mills, like they're just an L every week. It just depends on how bad. This is a historically strong game for Buffalo. Like they broke records for blowout wins. Houston was just terrible. I mean, Buffalo, I continue to say it, they're just all around a good team. Everything about them is really good. They've got the running game going. They haven't played good teams. Don't get me wrong. They haven't played good teams the last few weeks. Josh Allen has looked better. The defense is legit. We know that. So fascinated to see what the Bills come up with in the next few weeks as their schedule starts to get harder. Like we know they're good. We just need to find out how good. So they get Kansas City this week. That's a Sunday night football game. That's going to be the big one, right? So we'll talk about Kansas City, but there's I don't see how Buffalo doesn't come into this game, and I didn't even look at it. Let me flip to our odds real quick because I want to see Buffalo. Did I miss it? I missed it. No, it's down here. Wow, Chiefs are 2.5-point favorites. I feel like that's favorable for the Chiefs, simply because I don't think that I think that the Bills are legit, and I would probably take the Bills just to cover. I don't know if they win, but they should at least cover. Gold Glover will be interesting to see if Trey Lance can take the helm and bring them back. Man, that offense just seems out of sync in KC. It doesn't really matter. KC is at home. They have it even then. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. And it's probably moved half a point towards KC since the opening line. That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, Trey Lance is we'll talk about that whatever we talk about the San Francisco game, but the San Francisco offense is they gotta figure something out. And I hate to say it, but it's probably on Shanny to figure it out. So that's Houston Buffalo. Don't really need to spend much time on there. Washington Atlanta. So for Washington Atlanta, again, it's kind of the same thing we've been talking about. Washington, their front isn't as bad as it seems. That back end is just atrocious. Atlanta gets up to a big lead. Washington has to climb back. Have no idea why Washington doesn't just use Antonio Gibson more to be able to protect that defense when you know that defense is bad. They just continue to blow coverages. And it's just bad. And so we know Atlanta's bad. They're bad enough to allow Washington to come back. Taylor Heineke, I mean, he goes. Heineke is, yeah. So Gabe, you're right. Heineke is a baller. The problem is he's the baller that will, jack up a three from half court and hit it. But he's also the dude that will, throw a layup that goes over the top of the backboard too. So They've got to figure out how to rein him in a bit, and not have to rely on him. I don't think he's a franchise guy, but he can get some up and downs game. I mean, yeah, like he's a fill-in for this year, right? Like this isn't a guy that they're gonna go, oh, we think that he can be the guy for the next few years. I mean, he went 23 of 33, 290, 3 touchdowns, 1 sack. I think that's favorable for him. And this is he also rushed 5 times for 43 yards, but this is a bad Atlanta defense. Like I think it's probably the Lions are the worst defense in the NFL, and then I think I think it's probably Atlanta is not far behind them. Let's see. Atlanta's defensive DVOA is 29th. The only teams that are worse are Jacksonville, Detroit, and the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 32nd in defensive DVOA, which is interesting. They're also first in offensive DVOA. So very Hyde and Jekyll team. Or Jekyll and Hyde, however you want to say it. So I don't think we learned anything in particular about either of these teams. Washington scrapes out a win. And I think they still remain second in the division after that. Simply because the Giants only have 1 win. Let's see. Yeah, Giants and Eagles are 1-3. Washington's 2-2. Washington is 2-2 with a negative 21 point differential. Meanwhile, Eagles and Giants are 1-3 both, and both have a negative 12 point differential. So outside of the Cowboys, that is just not a good division. And there's no way that we can continue to rely on or continue to think that Washington has a good defense. So we'll look and see who Washington has this week. But I feel like Washington is not. I can't count on Washington to do anything. They got New Orleans, who is Jekyll and Hyde all by themselves. So that should be an interesting game. All right. So who was it? Gabe asked for Arizona and Los Angeles Rams. Let me move to my notes. NFC or AFC South are bad. NFC East but I don't know which is worse. I mean, the only ones that we know are good are the AFC West and NFC West. Sorry, Mike went out. The only ones that we know that are good are AFC West, NFC West. Everybody else is up for debate at this point because it's a whole lot of mixed results. It feels very top heavy, right? So pretty much every division has a clear leader. Bills are 3-1, Dolphins, Pats, Jets, all 1-3. Bengals, now we'll say AFC North is a little bit different. Bengals, Ravens, Browns are all 3-1. Bengals don't feel nearly as good as the other two. Ravens, Browns probably clear top. Chargers, Raiders, Broncos, Chiefs is just insane. NFC West is the same way. Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, 49ers. And what I thought was going to be the 49ers towards the top of that division looks like the worst. And then it's Packers. Vikings are 1-3, though they should probably be at least 2-2. The Bears are 2-2 and actually second in the division, but that just doesn't feel right. And then Lions are bad. They may not win a game all year. I forget who I think Austin's team is the Lions. He's probably avoiding this because he knows how bad that particular game was last week. So yeah, so I don't think that there's a great division out there other than the West divisions. Let's see here. All right, Rams in Arizona. So with the Cards Rams, this might be one of the best game plans I've seen Vance Joseph put together. Like he had the Rams number pretty much the entire game. It's clear that that the Cardinals are a really good football team. I think everybody knows that. I think where I struggle with predicting the Rams every week is I'm lagging behind Kyler Murray's progression. He's progressed past where I thought he should be, and it's hard for me to catch up because he has basically turned into a quarterback that can make every read. We know he can make all the throw, right? And short, not small. Um, and dude can scamper with the best of them. And he's so fast and he can create so well both in the pocket and outside of the pocket. And he's done such a better job of one, keeping his eyes up even whenever he's running around and looking for the pass, and he is finding that time after time after time after time. And I think he's hitting that at a bigger rate than what I expected him to hit this year. And this game is a perfect example of it. He hit AJ Green for a 41-yarder. The pass to Max Williams was phenomenal for a touchdown. Like, he just continues to be above and beyond everything that I've thought, and he does it with his legs. It's so hard to keep him in the pocket. When he gets out of the pocket, nobody seems to be able to catch him. He seems so much faster than pretty much everybody else on the field, which is crazy because he was one of those guys where I thought, okay, he's fast, but I don't feel like he's going to outrun some of these NFL defensive ends. And he's absolutely outrunning some of these NFL defensive ends and making them look slow in the process. And that was the other thing that stuck out to me is how fast this Cardinals, like the entire team is. When the Rams played the Bucks, I thought the Rams looked really fast against the Bucks, and I get it, Bucks secondary not great, and all of that. But I thought this entire team, both on offense and defense, I thought the Rams looked good. I thought they looked very quick, sound. But man, when they played the Cardinals looked like they were just in another tier of quickness. And so I just don't see, I can't wrap my head around what I still feel like the volatility of the Cardinals from play to play and week to week. Like, I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop where the Cardinals aren't able to continue to do this. It's kind of like watching like Brett Favre, right? Like, when he's just living on the edge on every single play, it doesn't make sense that he can continue to do this and not suffer the negative of living on the edge. And I feel like that's where I'm at with the Cardinals. Like, are they going to regress, or is Kyler still going to play at this level? Is this defense still going to be able to fly all over the place? I mean, they leave gaps all over the field, but they're fast enough to cover them. And I'm not really sure. I mean, they're going to be a hard out for anybody. As long as they're well prepared and Cliff Kingsbury does what he needs to do, this is going to be a hard team to beat. I mean, obviously they're for real. They beat who everybody, myself included, thought was then the best team in the league. And I will say, the Rams, when they come in and get punched in the mouth, it seems like they don't respond very well. They don't like to play aggressively, right? And here's the thing. Here's the thing I thought about this weekend with the Rams offense. Like, last week I tweeted about how it took Brady 13-ish weeks to really click and to get cooking in the Bucs offense last year. And you can argue that a weird offseason and no preseason could have delayed that a bit, but that's not going to delay Brady figuring out an offense for a full 13 weeks. Like, it's not going to 13 weeks isn't just a few weeks in the offseason. That's not how it works. But then again, here's McVay and Stafford, and Stafford is cooking from week one. And without playing a preseason game, Matt Stafford comes in and starts rolling. And that right there is why anyone who has ever shaken hands with McVay in the last 3 years is a hot commodity in the rest of the NFL and other places. And it's because McVay's offense seems very easy to learn, right? Like, anybody seems to be able to pick it up. It can be installed very quickly. It's very QB friendly, and everybody loves that. So how does he do that, right? Like, the key to McVay's offense is that it isn't complicated. It's actually pretty simple. And while it makes it great for a QB learning it, it can also make it a bit limited. And if a defense knows what they're looking at, they can defend it. And where McVay is really successful is that it's simplified because a lot of the formations look the same. He'll run same formations, a lot of the same personnel in the same. Sometimes he'll switch them up. Sometimes he'll leave them the same. but he'll run it with different wrinkles off of that same looking formation. And then he's really good at stringing those wrinkles together and then moving defenders and creating open receivers with it. And he teaches his quarterbacks how to read those wrinkles and what they're designed to do. There's a great example of it from this Sunday. In the first drive, the Rams stacked 2 receivers in the slot, I think 3 times. Yeah, I think it was 3 times. And on the first play, they both run in breaking routes, what are called arches. And the outside receiver runs a go route. The 2 slot receivers that are stacked on top of each other on the line of scrimmage, they run the in breaking routes. And then later, he runs the same formation, and it's the same streak in, but different players are running the different routes. So now you've got the front guy in the stack running the streak up the seam, and you've got the outside and the inside guy that's off the line of scrimmage now running the ends. So it's the same in and streak with it. It's just from different places on that same side of the formation. So and then there was another one where they did it again, and the seam was actually the guy from the back of the slot and ran it up, and then the arches were in. And then, that was the one where Cooper Kupp ran the double move off of it. So Kupp's in the slot and he runs up and he runs like he's going to make that in, while the outside gets the go route, and then the guy in front of, I think it was Woods, gets the arch across the middle or the in route across the middle. And then Cooper acts like he's going to run that in route, but then breaks out and makes a double move out of it. So it's another wrinkle off of that same play. And it's all run out of the same formation. It all looks the same at the line. And so it makes it hard for a defense to read that. But if you know that that's what McVay likes to do, you can defend against it, because he doesn't have 400 offensive plays in the playbook. He's got 50, and then he just moves people around and runs different variations of that same play. So he'll take one thing and he'll play with it and he'll tweak it, and he'll try to get the defense looking for the wrong thing or moving a step or two out of place, which in the NFL creates huge holes for the offense to strike. So there isn't a ton of complexity. And when you get a defense that doesn't bite as much on those wrinkles, or when you're Vance Joseph and you're calling a defense that can mitigate those type of things, whether through intelligence, through game planning, through pre-scouting, and then also one that's athletic enough to hit and tackles very, very well, like, it limits what that offense can do. And the Cardinals are fast enough, athletic enough, and Vance Joseph had them very well prepared to be able to get to the ball quickly, and they made it very, very tough on those plays to be successful. And look, Stafford missed a few throws in this. I think he played all right, but he missed some throws that he hit against the Bucs. And I think that could have been a pretty big difference in this game, because the Cardinals, they dominated this game. Like, they looked like they were in a different class. And I mean, here's the thing. I think, and we'll talk about this, I think, a couple of times. I have it in my notes, but it looks like the Cardinals gave everybody else a blueprint to keeping the Rams offense in check. The question is do other defensive have the same type of players, and can they execute and tackle? Because if you can't stay disciplined and know what you're looking at, and if you can't tackle, the Rams are going to run all over the place on you, because they create yards after the catch as well as anybody. And Sean McVay's offense does that. And then Kyler Murray was pretty much flawless in this game. So, I mean, there was just so much that Arizona did right. They came in so well prepared. Again, I'm interested to see, is Cliff Kingsbury still able to maintain this, or does he lose that advantage as the year goes on, as he has in past years? It's not like we're just thinking about this out of nothing and creating it out of the ether. Cliff Kingsbury has shown that the later the year goes on, the more likely his team is to fade, because it feels like other teams are adapting to Cliff and he's not adapting back. So are they good enough to overcome that? Are they smart enough to see that and do something different? We'll have to see. But Arizona was impressive and is one of, I think, two? Are they the only undefeated team in the NFL right now? Yeah, I think they're the only undefeated team. Yep. Arizona, only undefeated team. So last one standing. Let's see how long they can keep it going. All right, let's get to a couple comments. Gabe, has Arizona right side of the line had issues before this game? I think it might just be Rams D-line issue. The O-line has been good. It seems like a different person on the O-line struggles from week to week. I don't, there hasn't been anything that stood out to me about the O-line that's just been like, oh my God, this has been terrible. There's a vertical route by somebody where the middle linebacker had like 3 dudes going into his own. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is McVay's really good about putting stress on an individual player and having a quarterback read the defensive player that they're putting that stress on, right? So there are a couple of plays. Hello? Oh, sorry. There are a couple plays that they called where they put some stress on both the middle linebacker and the safety behind him. And they force them to make a decision about where they're going to go. Because when you have people crossing in front of your face, you need to chase one of those. And if you're going to chase this guy, I'm throwing to this guy. And if you're going to chase this guy, I'm throwing to that guy. And they do a really good job of getting those situations where it's going to be really, really hard to beat them. And then you've got guys like Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp who are just phenomenal at running routes and can shake just about any man coverage. So, I mean, they're set up really, really well to be successful. I just think they ran into a buzzsaw. I think it's going to be hard to look at this game and say that it wasn't anything different, that it was just, Arizona was just better. I think that this is one of those games where you came in and Arizona had the Rams number for this particular game. I'm not sure that I'm there yet in terms of saying the Cardinals are a much better team than the Rams. They certainly looked like it on Sunday, but we also know that can change from week to week. So we'll wait and see. Super impressed how Arizona closed out the game also. Yeah, Chase Edmonds, John Connor, those guys are good. They're good enough up front to move people off the ball. They have good running backs. AJ Green looked like a number 1 receiver again. Even with Hopkins hurt, they have Rondell Moore, who's dynamic, by the way, and is a lot of fun to watch. And then they've got Chris Kirkpatrick, and they have a plethora of weapons that they can use. And then they've got Kyler Murray, who can basically create on his own and allow those guys to spend some more time getting open. And that's just really hard to defend. So Stafford was missing also too, open guys. Yeah, Stafford, it really seemed like, man, they came out, got punched in the mouth, and then Arizona or Los Angeles didn't know what to do. Once the Rams got punched in the mouth, it was, okay, now what do we do? And then they came out with no life in the second half, and you knew it was over from there. It was an inspiring win for Arizona. They've got to feel really good about that. So, as far as on to, the next, I feel like Arizona's, let's check Arizona's schedule while we're here. But I think Rams get Seattle this week, which is tomorrow night, which we'll do a little bit of side casting for. So it's funny because last week we had 2 NFC matchups, NFC West matchups. Again, we're gonna have 2 NFC. So last week it was Rams Cards, Niners Seahawks. This week it's Niners Cardinals, Rams Seahawks. So this will be fun. Be a very interesting 2 weeks for the NFC West and some really difficult games for them. San Francisco and the Cardinals. It's hard to. I would bet that San Francisco's probably an underdog by 7 points, especially with Trey Lance in there, huh? 5.5. Okay, not bad. I don't know. I continue to wait to see when Trey Lance or when the Cardinals are gonna fall off that edge. I feel like you can only live dangerously for so long before something crazy happens. So, Arizona 30 points and 400 plus total yards in each game this season. Offense is just ridiculous, man. And the defense doesn't even have to be that good whenever your team's putting up 30 points every game. So, yeah, Interesting. All right. We'll scroll back. Let's get through. We got through Washington, Atlanta, Houston, Buffalo. Let's talk about Detroit, Chicago. So Detroit, Chicago. All right. We all know the Lions are terrible on like probably overall, but definitely on defense. And I think this week definitely shows it. They are just the Bears were a complete atrocity on offense versus Cleveland last week, and like, hang on. All right, sorry. I had to fix some notes there. Like, so the Bears looked like a complete atrocity against Cleveland last week, right? Like that defense just looked dominant against the Bears, and they look pretty damn good this week too. But this week they come into Detroit and they actually look like they know what they're like. This offense looks like they know what they're doing. They all of a sudden they're blocking. They're blocking well up front. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Receivers look good. So like that's the thing of where you're gonna be from week to week. It's going to be a different thing, right? So for me, it's important to understand that the Bears are playing the Lions, and I'm setting this up for a reason because it's important to have the context when we go into the conversation about Fields. And before we get there, we've got to talk about the Lions. The Lions left everyone running all over the place. And for me, it was more the Lions than anything that the Bears did. So this Lions defense is a disaster. So I will say Swift and Williams, they seem to swap weeks in which they're going to get the focus. So I'm guessing that's a matchup thing between Williams and DeAndre Swift. But I haven't exactly figured out how or why they determine who gets what and how they're going to use them different in matchups. It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense for me right now. I'll have to watch a couple more games to kind of see how that goes. Goff is still bad. His line of 24, 38, 299, 2 touchdowns is more favorable than he actually played. He took 4 sacks, fumbled 3 times, and the Bears defense is solid. Like they can get pressure. They still have Khalil Mack, who he can take over a game still. He didn't in this one in particular, but he can. Robert Quinn and Akeem Hicks have played well all season. Jalen Johnson looks really good in the secondary in his second year. David Montgomery had another good day and a good line to support it. I think he went 23 for 106 and 2 touchdowns. And then he gets hurt. And so Damian Williams then steps in and goes 8 for 55 and a touchdown. And I know some people are loving Damian Williams in fantasy and they're like, oh, I got to add him and all that. But you also have to understand this is a spot where he benefited from the competition. The Lions are bad. Like I cannot stress how bad the Lions are. On Justin Fields, I will say I saw what I needed to see. He had some really good throws. He certainly missed some throws. He missed some things in his reads. The Lions were not able to get a pass rush, and that really helps. And they've been bad at that. It's not like the Chicago O-line played really well. That was on the Lions just can't rush the passer. The Bears didn't do anything special in blocking. And I think early on, Fields missed a wide open throw to Mooney, who basically had to dive backwards for it. Like Mooney comes in this like over route across the middle, and he's open the entire way, and Fields is late and seeing it late and throwing it completely under throws it. And Mooney has to make a spectacular catch, and he doesn't have guys within 15 yards of him anywhere. It was just it was weird because Fields is so accurate. It's just like he freaked out whenever he saw that Mooney was so wide open that he's like, oh, I'm just going to lay this in there. And then kind of like just doink the shot. It's kind of like sometimes like you step up to the free throw line and you go to shoot it. And all of a sudden like your arms give out because you're like, oh, it's a free shot. And you just airball it, you whiff it. That was kind of what I've thought about whenever Fields let that go is like, he got nothing on that. He didn't drive it. Like he just wasn't confident in that throw. He was more concerned about just not screwing up, and that caused him to screw it up a little bit more. Gabe Bears all 22 finally is also good. Dude, can I, like, off topic? Yes. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but the Bears all 22 looked like it was shot from like where the old all 22 looked like it was shot from like where the coaches stand on the sidelines. Like you could see like only half the players couldn't make out the numbers because they were literally like over top of each other on the screen because it was so low. Most all 22 is shot from what feels like a sky cam and shoots down on the field. And the Bears, they've never had that at Soldier Field. And now all of a sudden, for whatever reason this year, they're now way up high and it is fucking glorious. Like it is amazing. I used to refuse to watch Bears games because of that. I was like, I don't want to watch them. I'll watch them somewhere else. I would always watch their games away from home, which is only half the picture, right? But I would watch their games away from home just so that I didn't have to watch. And anybody that played at Soldier Field, nope. Sorry, your game's not important enough to me. Chicago hasn't been good for a while, so it's not like I was missing out on anything. So, anyways, sorry for the rant. So, Fields misses Mooney. Mooney makes a terrific catch, but then later on, Fields drops an absolute dime in the bucket between. But I think it was cover two, and he drops a dime in the hole shot instead of the quick throw. I think it was a corner route, and he just drops it into the receiver in between the safety and the corner that are collapsing on him, and it was just absolutely beautiful. Like his ability to throw the football is terrific. So I mean, there was some really good stuff he put on tape, some not so good stuff. Nothing about it was terrible. It was enough to say, okay, let's give it another shot with Justin Fields. Now, it's come out since then that Justin Fields is now the starter for the rest of the year. Okay, well, it's weird that they just automatically committed to that. I think you're probably a little. That feels like Nagy was told what to do. If I'm just being completely honest, it feels like Pace ownership. Somebody said, "Hey, this is who your quarterback is going to be the rest of the year. Stop dicking around. Fields is the guy. Go figure it out." And it doesn't feel like something that I felt like Nagy was really the guy to make that decision, because he just seemed to want to keep going back to Dalton for whatever reason. And he may have ended up going to Foles. So again, some good, some bad. Let's give it another shot. I can't overstate how bad this Lions defense is, so we can't overreact to what this week was. This week, Bears get the Raiders, and they're probably going to give Fields some trouble. But the thing is we're not looking for Fields to be dominant. If you're looking for Fields to come out and just absolutely dominate a game with his arm, with his legs, with his brain, you're going to leave disappointed. And that's on you, because look at the rookie quarterbacks. None of these guys have just come in and said, "Oh, this is my league and I'm going to dominate early on." Like, that's just not how rookie quarterbacks work. And so if you're expecting him to come in and dominate, that's on you. That's not on Justin Fields. That's you for having the wrong expectations. And, you should be held accountable for that. Not because Fields didn't play the way you thought he should. Fields needs to play the way he needs to play based on the curve of learning the NFL as a rookie quarterback who is running a completely different system than what was done at Ohio State, who doesn't have the talent advantage around him that he had at Ohio State, and who has an offensive head coach that can't really seem to get it together. Now, one thing that we need to talk about, and one big key here, is that Bill Lazor started calling the plays, or he was calling them this week. I don't know if this was just a this week thing. It feels like this was the first week he was doing it, because whenever Fields came in for Dalton, and started against the Browns, Nagy looked like he was calling the plays, and then all of a sudden somebody goes, "Hey, plays are being called in to Justin Fields, and Matt Nagy's not talking. So where's that coming from?" And then we found out that Lazor's taken over play calling, which to me is a great thing for Fields. Now, I think Lazor was an improvement, but he's still very much calling the same plays. It's not like he's like, all of a sudden there's a new offense. It's just he's calling different things in different situations. He's calling the same things, just in different situations and different timing. It felt like he had a little better feel for down and distance, running the ball when he could, or when he needed to. And I'll say I liked Lazor's play calling back whenever he was in Miami. I think that was Tannehill's best season in Miami whenever Lazor was calling plays. I think that was whenever he looked his best. So I'm cautiously optimistic to see Fields progress, but I'm also setting mild expectations for this week because it's a much different team, much different matchup. Like the goal for this week is we're looking for Fields just not to regress, right? So we don't want him to go backwards. And that sounds rough, right? Like you want to see somebody progress and get better every week, but you're going from the Lions defense to the Raiders defense, and this is totally different ball game. So let's just not see Fields be awful this week, and we should be okay with that. And then we'll see him as he kind of develops and gets a better feel for the game. Just don't go out and lay an egg for this game. It's against a much better team, a better defense. They're going to get some pressure on him. He's not going to play the same as he did against the Lions. And if he does, then okay, maybe we are looking at something special, but I don't know that he's there yet. So just go out, be smart with the football, get rid of it quick. Hopefully Lazor calls some plays, show some progression in terms of eye movement. And he needs to show some progression in terms of eye movement and recognizing gaps and protections. So Raiders are going to create some protection issues for him this week, specifically knowing that this is going to be something that he knows. Gruden can scout a quarterback. Gruden's going to know what he does and what he does well and what Fields doesn't do well. And then he's going to have his defense go attack that. So they're going to scheme up some complicated. They're going to run some games up front, some in tackle games. They're going to run some stints, some stunts, some scrapes. Like pressure is going to come from different places, and the O-line is going to have to deal with it. They haven't been good in doing that so far this year. Fields is going to have to recognize where the gaps and protections are. So he's now all of a sudden, he's been used to, I can focus on the back seven or back six, depending on if he recognizes where a blitz is potentially coming from. He shouldn't have to worry about the front 4 or 5. Let the offensive line handle that. All he's got to worry about is that secondary and the linebackers, right? Where he's actually throwing the ball. Problem is now he's got to see it all. He's got to see the whole picture. He's got to see all 11 players all on the field in a hurry at the same time. And he's going to have to process it super, super fast. So, I think that's where I'm looking to see how does he handle that? Is he smart with the football? Can he get rid of it quick? Show some progression in terms of his eye movement, recognizing the gaps in protection. Even if the stat line isn't terrific, like I'm just looking for improvement in all of the areas that don't include throwing the football, because Fields has that part covered. Like he's shown he's extremely accurate, has a good arm. I just need him to not miss those gaps in protection and to see it all a little bit sooner, a little bit faster whenever he's reading defenses, have a little bit more anticipation. Like this isn't all of a sudden going to come from him. So let's just be patient and give him some time and know that this is going to be a hard transition for him, especially behind an offensive line that's not very good. So we can wait and see, but yeah, I liked what I saw. I'm cautious about it because Detroit really is that bad. And they've made the statement and planted the flag in the ground that Fields is the guy and he's going to be in there the rest of the season. So we'll see how that goes. But we just got to be prepared for this to be, it could be ugly against the Raiders, or it could be good. I honestly don't know. I'd love to tell you like Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp, like this is what's going to happen, and then be completely wrong about it. But I don't think anybody really has a good feel for what's going to happen because you've got a new play caller, you got a rookie quarterback, you got a bad offensive line, you got a Raiders defense that's coming off of getting torched by the Chargers. There's a lot of dynamics and context in this game, and in the game this week. Fields has got a lot to do this week. I do like the idea that he's now got a couple games under his belt. He'll have a full week of preparation, reps with the starters, know what he's getting into. I do feel like he's got some opportunity to potentially be successful. I'm not going to overdo it. Gabe, Lazor did this calling playing last year also. Lazor called plays. Oh, Lazor did step in at one point, I feel like. I can't remember. I feel like there was some point last year where he did step in and started calling the plays. The one thing I'll say about the Bears is like I don't hate their skill position. Like Allen Robinson's solid. David, but they've got to figure out how to run the ball. David Montgomery, Damian Williams, like good players. David Montgomery's going to be out for a while though, so Damian Williams is going to have to pick up the slack. Darnell Mooney looked pretty solid. Had 5 catches, 125 yards. Allen Robinson he was the one that caught the teardrop into the pocket or into the hole. They've got to find something outside of those couple of guys though. If Fields just has 2 receivers, it ain't gonna be pretty for him. So, all right, on to the next one. So one of my favorite games that I was looking forward to this week was Carolina and Dallas. So, we talked about in the pregame matchup show as well as on the preview show on Thursday. Carolina looked like they may be a little bit of fool's gold, but they probably weren't complete fool's gold. And honestly, I'll say that that's probably what that really kind of hammered that point home. Like Dallas really handled business in this game. And I think for this particular game, it showed that if you have a good O-line, you can own the line of scrimmage by running the ball against the Panthers front. Now, not everyone has the Cowboys offensive line to be able to do that. But when Dallas realized that they could, Dallas took complete advantage of it and just hammered that particular point. Like when they really started popping them up front, Carolina began to struggle on defense. They couldn't figure out how to adjust. I was super interested to see how Phil Snow worked against the pass game. However, the pass game never really got going for Dallas, and they just ran. They ran for 245 on 34 rushes, 245 yards. That's 7-2 a carry. So just based on the math, the Cowboys never needed to throw the ball because they'd achieve first downs on 2 runs. And if you give them a third one, they're definitely going to get there. So I know that's hyperbolic, but honestly, if you're running at that clip, press that advantage and make the other team stop you. And Dallas did. Zeke went for 143 on 20 carries. Tony Pollard added 67 more on 10 carries. I think Dak had 4 for 34, if I remember correctly. Dak didn't need to do much and still had he wasn't impressive. He ended up with 188 yards and 4 TDs. Zeke was the only running back who got a touchdown out of the group, but those 4 TDs really belong to the running backs because they did most of the work. Even not throwing that much, Dak still had 2 or 3 throws that you just go, WTF, what was that? Like, where were you going and what happened? And he also has some throws that it makes him look like potentially the best quarterback in the NFL. So I keep saying this, that there's going to be some team that comes along and those 2 or 3 throws that Dak has that for every game this season has basically, except for the Bucks capitalized on at least one of them. And then they got lucky on another one. And there's going to be teams that come along and capitalize on those throws, and it's going to flip how that particular game looks, and how Dak looks for that particular game. I think we got what we expected out of Dallas, all except for Lamb not having a strong day. He had 2 catches, 5 targets. That may not sound like a lot, but Dak only had 22 attempts. So, I mean, there was still a few shots that were taken at Lamb. They couldn't really connect. It was just one of those weird games where it just doesn't work out Lamb's way. And I think you're going to have that where some games it's a CeeDee Lamb game and some games it's an Amari Cooper game. And this was definitely more of an Amari Cooper game. It's not like Lamb was locked down or anything, but the Cowboys just had other stuff going and they didn't really bother with Lamb because the run game was working. The underneath stuff to the tight ends was wide open all afternoon. Cooper was having a good game as well. Like it's nothing to be worried about if you're a CeeDee Lamb owner in fantasy, or if you're watching this game and going, why isn't CeeDee Lamb, playing well? I mean, he's fine. It's just, there are going to be those games there. Gabe, with all these cornerbacks Carolina got, who's going to be the slot guy. Horn did play inside and outside before his injury. It might be. I was thinking about that today. I think it's probably Dante. That probably makes the most sense to me. Gilmore's the type of guy that you can move around and chase guys with. Well, let me say this. Gilmore was the type of guy that you could move him around. He probably ends up in the slot if he's full health. Without him, I'm not really sure. I think Dante Jackson, AJ Bouye is probably going to play in the slot a good amount. I don't know, honestly. Honestly, I don't know, because you've got CJ Henderson, Rashawn Melvin, AJ Bouye, Dante Jackson, JC Horn, and Stephon Gilmore. Like, that's 6 solid cornerbacks right there. You may even get one of them playing safety at some point just to get them all on the field, and playing that kind of smaller safety. Gilmore can play that position too. Grizz, Dante Johnson contract expiring. I'm not sure. Just because it's expiring doesn't mean that they can't extend him. But I feel like they're definitely gonna end up. His contract is expiring. He's on a rookie deal right now. 2.4 this year. In salary, yearly cash $6 million this year, $6.5 million this year. Unrestricted free agent next year. 1, 2, 3, 4. What pick was he? State round 2. Okay. So if the problem is that he was drafted in the second round, if he was drafted in the first round, Dante Jackson, they would have the option for that 5th year, but they don't have that. So Dante Jackson's, he's going to get paid, whether that's in Carolina or somewhere else. They definitely can. So I don't see him going anywhere. They should be able to lock him up. I want to check one thing real quick. I want to see how much cap space the Panthers have right now. I looked at this earlier, but I didn't know. All right, as of this morning, Carolina Panthers had $19 million in cap room. They're going to be fine. They're going to be perfectly fine. Because remember, every year you can roll over cap, right? And you can just continuously roll over cap. So not everybody has the same amount of cap space. So like right now, the Tampa Bay Bucks, their particular team cap room is 178,870. Let's see, 178,870. And then Carolina's is that right? Yeah, team cap 167,295. They carried over 4.2 million last year. Bucks carried over 4.5. So they should be fine. I don't know who all of their expiring expiring contracts are, but with 19 million, they can probably figure out. Let's see, 2022 free agents. So Stephon Gilmore, Matt Paradise, Hassan Reddick, Daquan Jones. Okay, so they're gonna have to figure this out. Dante Jackson, Rashawn Melvin, Royce Freeman, Ian Thomas, Jermaine Carter, who's played really well. Yeah, okay, so they've got a significant amount of guys that are going to be potential free agents. So they need to get to some extensions and get to moving on figuring that out. So yeah, I think they're going to be fine. They're going to and it seems like their plan for this year. Again, the one thing I'll say about the Stephon Gilmore trade is this feels like a gigantic Belichick middle finger to Brady. And I just may be creating drama out of nowhere, but Belichick traded a former defensive player of the year, potential shutdown cornerback, whose number one option, if he were released, was probably going to be Tampa Bay, because they are in desperate need of a player like Stephon Gilmore. Tom Brady was probably already recruiting him. There's no employment tax in Florida. Like you're in Florida where it's beautiful all year round. Like there's a million different reasons as to why he would have wanted to come here and would have figured it out. Not to mention the opportunity to potentially win a Super Bowl. And Belichick says, "No, I'm going to trade you to the best team as of right now, the best team in Brady's division for just a 6th-round pick." Like that's it. That's all you can get for a player like Stephon Gilmore. So I feel like, yeah, Bill, you're right, Gabe. Bill has been trying to get rid of Gilmore for over a year. So why now is he taking a 6th-round pick to trade him into a division rival of Tom Brady? Who, by the way, Tom Brady plays in week 16 and 18 of this year, when they could have just let him go. I mean, is the 6th round pick is worth it to Bill? I'm curious again. I'm just curious as to how Stephon Gilmore is feels about all of this. I don't know if he was worked into the trade, if his agent helped facilitate it, if they already know that a contract's in work. Like I'm not 100% that Gilmore is completely happy with this particular trade. I don't know. Everybody says, "Oh, it's his hometown." Okay, that's fantastic. I'm originally from Central Kentucky. If I were working for the Bucks and somebody traded me to the Bengals without my without my consent, well, okay, I'm going to the Bengals, but I'm not necessarily going to be happy about it. Sure, it's closer to where my family lives, but so what? If I'm an NFL player, I can fly them in any game I want to. I can go home and see my family whenever I want to. Like it's not like seeing them as an issue in terms of like traveling to get there and money. So I don't know. It seems very weird to me. But yeah, I mean, Carolina loves their man cover corners, and Stephon Gilmore fits that perfectly. And when J.C. Horn comes back, and they've got Horn, Gilmore, and Dante Jackson, I mean, if Gilmore is up to what we think he can be and what he has been in the past, and that quad injury ends up not being that impactful, that's one of the few teams that probably could potentially give the Bucks some problems on offense because they can rush up front. They've got speedy linebackers, and they've got the corners to be able to cover. Now, the safety is still a little bit of a question mark, don't get me wrong, but especially Cody Chen. But like, there's the potential. That's a team that could be built to beat the Bucks, and all because Bill Belichick basically handed him a gift for a 6th-round pick. So I don't know. We'll see. But I thought that was fascinating. I feel like that's definitely a Belichick middle finger, is what that is. So, let's see. Where were we at? All right. I think the real story specifically about the Carolina Dallas game is, I think Carolina came in after playing the Jets, the Saints during their injury and COVID week, and then the Texans. So they were 3-0. We were asking, are they for real? This was their opportunity to show that they were for real, and they didn't really seem up to the challenge. Gabe, I would always be careful of a player Bill wants to get away from, no matter how good they are. He does it for a reason. Brady was a different story. I was talking about this a little bit on Twitter. I feel like, if I'm being honest, feeling like Belichick's losing his touch a little bit. I was actually talking about this. It was in DM, so I won't say who it was. I was actually talking about this with somebody who they went and looked up like some aggressive metrics for me, in terms of like tracking how aggressive teams are on like 4th down and field goals and stuff like that. And as of, I think it was 2010, in 2010, Brady or Belichick was the 3rd most aggressive in terms of going for it in particular situations. As of now, I think last year he was 21st or 17th, something like that. But anyways, he was average to just below average in terms of being aggressive and going for it. And he's just not making the same decisions that he's made in the past. And I'm not really sure. Like, Gabe, that was my first thing. Okay, well, is it because he doesn't trust his QB? And that might be part of it. Like Brady looked bad. What was it? 2016? 2016 was the year I was like, "Oof, are we sure Brady's got another few years in him?" Because he does not look like he's got another few years in him. And there was a bunch of people saying he was done. And then he just like, I don't know, he just like got cloned or something, and all of a sudden became this 25-year-old quarterback at the age of 40 all over again. And now he's playing well, but I think the decision we'll get into the decision the other night whenever we talk about the Pats Bucks game. But I mean, I think that might be part of it, not trusting his QB in the past. But Bill just doesn't. He does not seem to have the savvy in terms of game management, aggression management, all of those type of things that that he used to just have a really good grasp. He's just far outpaced the rest of the league. Now the league's caught up. Now Brandon Staley's going for it on fourth down in some kind of weird situations, and nobody bats an eye. Like it's just feels like it's a normal thing. So it's one of those things where Belichick hasn't adapted as quickly as everybody else has, and now he's just kind of middle of the pack. Also, McVay didn't go for it much versus Arizona, which was weird, Gabe. So, believe it or not, McVay is actually one of the least aggressive coaches in all of the NFL. I think he's like bottom 3 in terms of being aggressive. When it's a fourth down call, you can count on him not going for it. It's just normal. It's just normal for him to do. I know he's a young guy. Feels like he likes to get after it and all this stuff. Nope, not necessarily the case. Jay Simsy, welcome in. Appreciate it. Appreciate the question. Should I trade Najee Harris for Cordell, Julio, Kareem, Mooney, and Michael Carter? So one Najee Harris for all of those players? Is that what you're asking? So here's the thing. It always depends on your team, right? And where you're at and everything. So to me, context is everything. Like whenever I'm telling a story, I'm a terrible storyteller. The reason is because I got to fit in all those little details that I feel like matter. And people are like, dude, I don't give a shit. Get to the point. Like my wife was, can you just spit it out the other day? Because I couldn't get it. So for me, context matters. Yes, 5 for 1. So is the ultimate way to look at any particular trade is your offense, is your team actually better if you take Najee Harris out and you put in whoever you need, right? So Cordell Patterson's going to play at running back. So that's you're basically swapping those guys out. You're probably going to lose a little bit because Pittsburgh's probably going to have to figure out the run game for the rest of the year. Cordell Patterson's he's going to be good all year. Like he's the weapon that Atlanta has decided they need to be able to get around a bad offensive line. Problem is at some point teams are going to start taking him away, and I will see how Atlanta adapts to that. When teams start taking him away, I think maybe that's when they start trying to get Pitts more involved. Now, Julio looks like a stud as long as he's healthy. Kareem, I mean, to me, I'm always looking at it as who's going to get, if my team's good and I'm missing one particular spot, I'm going to trade 3 people for one person because just solidify my starting lineup. And then that way I don't have to make a decision every week about who to start, who to play. 1 player for 5. I mean, overall, you're going to end up getting more points out of that. But at the same time, you're also probably not going to play all of those people every single week. So kind of what's the point? And it's not good if you take, so say Najee is 15 points every week. So if you trade Najee out and you put Cordell Patterson in, who's only 10 points, and I'm just using round numbers for easy math, right? So you take Najee out, 15 points out of your lineup, put Cordell Patterson. Now you're minus 5 points. Okay. That's not great. But now are you putting Kareem into a running back spot? And is that going to get you your 5 points back? Or is Julio going into a wide receiver spot that's going to get you your 5 points back? I mean, it feels like let's see. My team is Josh Allen, Najee, Chubb, Jefferson, Shepard, Knox, and I'll probably trade for. Well, if you take this deal, you don't need a flex. You could definitely use an upgrade over Shepard. Probably use an upgrade over Knox. Jefferson's good. I feel like you probably need, if it's standard scoring, it looks like you need the help in all of those spots. I would not be a big fan of your team, if I'm being honest. Or should I trade Najee Swift for Devontae Smith? I'd probably take the 5. Because with your team, I'm guessing you're probably, so right now you're probably what, like middle to bottom half of the pack. You're going to need a better team all around to be able to compete with the big guys. I'd probably go for the 5-for-1. It's PPR. Yeah, I would. Oh, if it's PPR, Cordero and Julio and Kareem, maybe not Kareem, but yeah, it's hard to. That's hard not to take that 5-to-1 trade just based off of your team. What position are you in, Simsy? All right, let's finish out. Let's finish out Carolina and Dallas. We'll get back to the fantasy football talk in a second. So on offense, let's see. All right, on offense, Carolina. Let's see. Carolina moved the ball well. Dallas's overall talent just seemed to squeeze the life out of the Panthers. They put the Panthers behind. They forced Darnold to start to really try to make something happen. And in the end, it results in 2 Trayvon Diggs picks. Were they back to back? It might have been on, not back to back drives, but the rest. So that basically effectively torched any hopes for Carolina at that point. And again, we'll talk about it a little bit, but this is another game where the better team just seemed to be able to sustain a higher level of play, and the lesser team just fades in the third and fourth quarter. And it's a trend that it seems to continue to happen with really good teams over bad teams. I will say, fun fact, Sam Darnold actually leads the NFL in rushing TDs with 5. Zeke, Derrick Henry, and James Conner are all tied for second with 4. Which is fun. Like Darnold had 2 in this game. One was off of a speed option that he took in untouched, and then another was actually a pass. They gave him a run pass decision. They rolled him out a little bit, and then he just decided he was going to run for it, and he got in pretty easily. So, and here's the thing: is nobody expects Sam Darnold to run. That's why he's getting away from it. I think at this point, teams are going to start going, okay, we at least got to respect this a little bit. It's not like he's fast or super athletic, but when you don't expect him to do it, you're just not in a good position. And Carolina seems to have a knack of when to use it and when to use his legs to their advantage. Gabe, did they ever put Patterson versus left tackle, left guard? So they definitely moved him over the left guard. I don't remember seeing him over the left tackle very much, but they did put him in front of the left guard a couple of times, and he destroyed from the interior over there. It seemed like they really just wanted to let Randy Gregory take over on that side. To me, I probably would have switched them, let Gregory win every once in a while against the right tackle, but let Micah Parsons just completely destroy the game from that side. Either way, they both got a good amount of pressure from no matter where they rushed. Like they both had a really good game. I remember Brady had like 12 rushing TDs one season from sneaks or something. Yeah. Yep. Those little one-line punch-ins from the 1 yard line. Yeah. One of the best ever at doing something like that. I would say all in all, I think Carolina ended up about where I thought they would in this particular game. I had picked them to cover, but what I realized after the game is that they were never going to be able to. I thought their defense would be able to keep up in the pass game against Dallas. I underestimated Dallas's desire and commitment to go with the run game when they found that it worked. And honestly, I should have seen that, because we talked about how Kellen Moore will figure out what the pressure point is, and then he's going to take his thumb and he's just going to push that until you break. And that's exactly what he did. And Dallas is one of the top teams in the NFL. We're not talking about like Are they for real? Like, are they, are they a top contender in the NFC East? Now, this is a team that you have to put in the conversation for NFC Championship and potential trip to the Super Bowl. Like, that's where they're at. Simsy, thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. I'll answer well, I'll get back to your fantasy question here in just a second. I want to finish up with this game. So I think Dallas exposed that Carolina just doesn't have the run stopping ability if your O-line is good enough. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think that's going to be a way that teams are going to start to try to attack, because it's really hard to block these four guys up front. And Burns, Reddick actually left the game with an injury. Derek Brown, like, they're going to have, and Morgan Fox, they're going to have problems blocking those guys whenever you just allow them to pass rush. But if you can be the aggressor and punch them in the mouth, they don't seem to hold up as well against that. And again, Dallas has a really good offensive line, so not every team's going to be able to do that. But especially if Stephon Gilmore steps in and teams feel like he's somebody that's going to be able to take away their best receiver, more teams are going to be likely to hammer the football against Carolina after this. So they're going to need to be prepared for the onslaught of rushing that's probably going to come at them. They play Philly this week. Philly has zero interest in running the ball. And that's not necessarily, they have a solid offensive line too. Hopefully Mailata is back for them this week. The problem is they just choose not to run the ball. Like, I was told that Philly refuses to run the ball because their analytics department says that it's a waste of time and says that the EPA for passing the ball is great. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. But you also have to respect, like, the context of situations. And I laugh at coaches because they're like, well, you don't know what the weather is and all of this stuff and all of that. And it's like, no shit, Sherlock. Like, the percentages are there in the majority of situations where it's going to be clear weather, like nothing crazy is going on, but you still need to be able to respect those percentages, because every little advantage you can take based on the analytics is going to be huge. So it sounds like Philly is just committed to throwing the ball, and they'd rather throw it 40 times with Hurts because that's what the analytics say that they should do, I guess. So they've got to figure out the run game. Their defense is not good enough. Like, it's great and everything to say, hey, pass plays have more EPA than run plays. Terrific. Yeah, but what about all that time? And this was the downfall of Chip Kelly. I cannot believe that of all teams, Philly doesn't understand this. But when Chip Kelly wanted to throw and run at just a breakneck pace on offense, they would put up 30 or 40 points a game. But their defense was giving up 30 points a game, 40 points a game as well, or giving up 50 points a game because they didn't win very much, because they were out there on the field the entire time. It's really hard to play like that, especially in the NFL. Like, the run game has more value than just its own EPA. Like, the run game has value on the defensive side of the ball as much as the offensive side of the ball, and maybe even more in today's NFL. So they've got to figure that out, and they should be prepared to be able to try to run the ball this week. I'll be interested to see if Philly is smart enough to do that. Now, we'll say in 2 weeks versus Minnesota, you better bet Phil Snow is going to have something ready for them. Like, he's going to have to figure out how to manage the run game, because Minnesota is going to bring it. With Madison and Cook, they may run 40 times at that front if they feel like they can't throw on it. So that'll be interesting to see. All right, Gabe, they just have overcome McCarthy game management at that point. Yeah, that, like, at this point, McCarthy's letting Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn do what they do. So that's good for him. I said at the beginning of the year, the less you see McCarthy in these game plans, the better off it's going to be. And I see no McCarthy, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I think they're terrific. Also, you don't generally win if you throw 50 times in the NFL unless you're named Tom Brady. Exactly. And again, we'll get to that, because that actually that stat right there, or that comment, plays very well into Bucks Pats for this week. And we can talk about that. All right, Jay Simsey, Middle of the pack, you guessed it. Yeah. So for you, I think you're going to need an upgrade in multiple positions. I think trading Najee, because you're going to end up playing 3 or 4 of those guys every single week, and it's going to make your overall team better. Normally, I'd say whoever gets the best player ends up winning a trade like that. But your team's probably going to be better off. If somebody actually offered you that trade, I would take it. If you're offering somebody that trade, they're probably not going to take it unless they just have a dominant team and they're missing one running back. That's the only reason they might do that. Like those guys would all need to be on their bench, but I highly doubt it. So I would definitely do the 5-1 over the Swift and Devontae Smith. You need more than just one running back and one wide receiver for Najee Harris. All right. Indiana, Miami. Colts and Dolphins. Man, I really was hoping to see Brissett come in and prove me right in this game, and boy, did he just try to do the opposite. So here's the thing. Brissett did not have a good game, had 4 or 5 turnover worthy plays that ended up being okay on. Keep saying he's great in the pocket, but he's got to get rid of the ball. I don't know what the hell he was seeing this weekend, because that dude just felt like he could just pitch a tent in the pocket and act like the rush wasn't coming. And I have no idea how he thinks he can get away with that. I don't know if he's just not paying attention, if if this is something that he's just never going to be able to get over as a player, but he's got to be he's got to get rid of the ball. And Miami and their offensive coordinators need to figure out how to help him do that. So I will say the one caveat here is that Miami's play calling was atrocious. It's funny because I had some folks that are tied to Miami and the Dolphins that were DMing me, and there's some weird stuff apparently going on behind the scenes in Miami, particular to that offensive staff. So I'm curious as to see how this plays out. There's apparently some back and forth happening, and there's too many cooks in the kitchen right now on the offensive side. So let's walk through this, right? So Miami has co-offensive coordinators. So you've got Eric Studesville and George Godsey. Godsey's the tight ends coach, and Studesville is the running backs coach, but they're co-offensive coordinators. There's no designation like most teams. So this isn't new. Like this is done before, and it's something that it's not common, but teams have done it before. I don't know of a team that's done it super successfully. Maybe Joe Brady. Maybe Joe Brady. I can't remember. I want to say he was passing game coordinator. Anyways, so they have co-offensive coordinators, tight ends coach, running backs coach, right? On top of that, Charlie Fry, who is the quarterbacks coach, also apparently has a say in play calling. So think of it this way. Think of you and your 3 buddies all playing Madden together, and you're on the same team, and none of you has you all have to agree on what the right play is, and you have to do it in 40 seconds. And you have to make the right call and then agree and then get it into the QB and then get them to the line and then get everybody together, right? You've got to do all of that in 40 seconds. So Miami has co-offensive coordinators plus a third person that is the quarterback's coach that apparently has a say. And it's not an ideal situation. This is not how an offense can be run in an efficient manner. Now, I will say impressors, Belichick and Gruden, have said that they both think that Godsey is the one calling plays. So I'm thinking that Fry, the way I understand it, is Fry and Studesville have input while Godsey is the final say, and he's the one calling the plays into the QB. So it's rare. It's not the first time that something like this has happened with multiple people calling plays or play calling duties have been shared. But it's also not particularly terrific. Now, we'll say whenever you have a passing game coordinator and a run game coordinator, like most of the time when this happens, that's how it's phrased. The passing game coordinator is the one actually calling the plays. The run game coordinator is saying, hey, if you want to run it, here's what we need to do. And here's what I would call. And then the passing game coordinator basically says, here's the run that he thinks we should go with, or, hey, I'm going to call a pass and here's the passing play. Now you can imagine how that works out. Typically it's a pass on things like that. So even though Brissett did not play well, they've got to figure out what the play calling is in Miami. There's just no way for them to continue to do what this is. And it looked like an absolute mess on Sunday. Brissett only had 76 pass yards in the third quarter, ended up with 199, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He was sacked 3 times. That 107.5 rating is higher than what he deserved, especially with the 2 fumbles he had. Like, there was one that was particularly awful of him just hanging out in the pocket. And like I said, I've talked about his pocket presence, but he just cannot keep holding on to the ball. Like, he's buying himself more time, but he's not using that time well. And I think it's a combo of the play calling and Brissett that's not helping the offense. They're not running the ball enough. There's like, with this particular offense, when you've got an offense that is really bad at the tackle positions, a backup quarterback that holds on to the ball too long, offensive play calling that can't really seem to get the running game going. You've got Will Fuller that's hurt. Devontae Parker drops too many passes. They don't have a ton of weapons to be able out there at receiver or tight end. So, like, there's a very narrow path of which this offense can be successful. Like, there's like 1 or 2 things that they need to make sure that they do every single week, or they just can't be successful. And right now, this offensive staff is just blind to wherever that path is. They don't see it. They don't feel it. They don't have a good feel for it. It's just bad. And the sad thing is the defense actually didn't play that well this weekend either. Like, this was Carson Wentz's best game of the year by far. He was still just mediocre, but like, when you make Carson Wentz look solid, that's not particularly good. We've talked about it. Miami's defensive line isn't, they don't have the horses up front to be able to get a ton of pressure. They've got a blitz. I think they're the second highest blitz rate in the NFL right now, behind the Bucs, and the Bucs are doing it simply because they have to protect that secondary. And I think that's, the Dolphins are doing it to protect their front, because if they don't blitz, they're not going to get pressure on anybody. And they do have the secondary to be able to back it up, though, I will say. So that the Dolphins secondary is really good, but when you can't get pressure up front, it makes it really hard to try to guard players for 4, 5, 6 seconds, right? In the pass game. So the Colts were better this game. Like I said, Wentz's best game by far. He ended up 24 for 32, 228, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. And that's the key. No turnovers. He did look a little healthier in the pocket, and it's hard to say, like, he didn't look like 100%, I thought, but I don't know how much healthier he's going to look, to be honest. Like, I thought it was great to see them utilize the run better to protect him, but Wentz still isn't moving particularly well. I just don't know that there's like much. I don't think the ceiling for how he's going to move is much higher than what we saw on Sunday. So we'll have to wait and see on that. I will say they did run the ball. Indy ran the ball a lot better on Sunday. They got Jonathan Taylor going a little bit. Rushed for 16 times, 103 in a TD. I will say a lot of the game flow and script dictated them running more. And then the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So Marlon Mack gets 10 carries in his first significant playing time of the season. He only carried for 22 yards, but he at least got in the game and got some looks. And then Hines he suffered a little bit in terms of timeshare. Hines played the same amount of snaps, but only had 4 touches to Mack's 11. Colts controlled the ball for 37 minutes. And this is the type of game the Colts want to run. Like, this is how they're going to have to win games. We talk about it every week. How does your offense and your defense, how do they play together, and your special teams? Are they playing the same game with the same focus and knowing that they've got to accomplish the same things against that particular opponent? And the Colts came in and did exactly what they needed to in this particular game. So I think the Colts want to be patient. They want to not have to ask Wentz to do too much. They were 7-3 at the half. They ended up 17-3 at one point, and then they just controlled the game from there in the third quarter. Like they had the ball for 37 minutes. That's a huge amount. That means the defense only had to defend for 23 minutes. Like that's the best way for me to frame that is if you're on the field, if your offense is on the field for 37 minutes, your defense is only on the field for 23 minutes. It makes it hard to get scored against. And that's what the Colts defense need. That's why I keep talking about being able to use the run game to protect your defense, is because when your defense only has to defend for less than 25 minutes, they've got a pretty good shot at keeping the other team off from scoring, or at least a better shot. I'm still not a believer in Indy. They get Baltimore this week. If they show up against Baltimore, I'll start to give them credit, but it feels like it's going to be a massacre in Baltimore on Monday night this week. That's the Monday night game. It just feels like a game where I should be able to go to bed by halftime knowing that one's well in hand. All right, that's Indy, Miami. We'll get to Cleveland, Minnesota. We'll do Cleveland, Minnesota. What time is it? Oh, it's only 9:00. Okay. I felt like it was later than that for some reason. Oh, I still got a bunch of games to go though. Okay, let's fly through a couple of these. I don't want to fly through Cleveland, Minnesota though. I thought that was a really good game. Or an interesting game to talk about at least. Let me find the right. There we go. All right. Browns 14, Vikings 7. So this was a game that everybody, Browns Vikings was a game where it felt like, Gabe, I'll do Denver Baltimore next. Good call. Cleveland Minnesota was a game where everybody thought it was going to be a run and shoot type of game, like that the defenses weren't going to play much of a part, and it was going to be 35-40 as a final score. It ends up being completely the opposite at 14-7. The Browns defense continues to impress me. Like I think it's actually the strength of this team. Not just one of the strength. I think it is the strength of this team. Even when the offense is healthy, the defense is going to continue to show up and dominate and be the heart of this team. I was really surprised at how well prepared they were against a really good Minnesota offense. I thought this was the best game the Browns have played all year, aside from maybe opening day against KC, but I still think this game was better. And I love that the Browns don't need to rely as much on Baker, because the run game is booming and the defense is terrific. Like they stopped the Vikings run game, which is a huge task, and they limited Cousins, who had played incredibly well up until this particular game, and they just stifled the entire Vikings offense. Baker didn't have a good game. They still pretty much this is probably one of Baker's worst games. There were some throws in here that I haven't seen Baker make some as bad of throws as he's made in this game in a long time, maybe since his rookie year. But the Browns pretty much controlled this game from start to finish. They can play fast or slow if they need to, and they're developing smart game plans based on every opponent. Like this was the game to me that signaled that the Browns are for real. And now I'm fascinated to see them match up against the Chargers this week, who you guys know I love. Like for me, the Chargers are number one in the AFC, and I'm fascinated to see the Browns play them this week, because the Browns are really impressive against what I think is a Minnesota team that's a lot better than probably what a lot of people are going to give them credit for. On the Minnesota side, I thought they would win this game, but it was more about I think it was more about a misevaluation of the Browns than a misevaluation of the Vikings for me personally. Cook went for 924. Madison went for 9. So Cook ran 9 for 24, only 24 yards on 9 rushes. Madison rushed for 10 times on 20 yards, and that spelled doom for the Vikings. Cousins threw it 38 times, mostly trying to mount a comeback after going down 11-7 in the second. I think the Vikings eventually decided that they just couldn't run, and they tried to let Cousins carry them, but they couldn't find consistency in anything that they did. Cousins had a few nice throws. but the drives would just continue to stall because he was only hitting about one out of every two passes. And the run game wasn't supportive whenever he wasn't on fire. And without those two things, they just weren't able to mount a fully cohesive and prepared offense. And if Minnesota doesn't have the run game and Cousins isn't on fire, it's tough. I mean, they have really good receivers, but Minnesota and Cousins, I think they're going to come back to form. I think Minnesota and Cousins are going to come back to form this week against the Lions. Then they're going to get another test the following week in Carolina, and I think that should be a fun matchup. Like, it's nice that Minnesota is going to get this breather this week, just because they need it after getting pummeled by this Cleveland defense. So, like, we talked about how bad the Lions are. This should be a huge game for the Vikings. I could see the Vikings winning that particular game by 4 touchdowns. It's that bad in Detroit. And I know that they like to claw back and fight and everything, but like I said, I don't know that they're going to be able to maintain that level of fight all season long with how poor that particular roster is. All right, on to Denver, Baltimore. That was the one. So this is a good call game. So for me, Denver, Baltimore was, I feel like I got the game plan right on this game. I just got the outcome wrong. And I think I can't blame it on Teddy going down with a concussion on the last play of the first half, but I am going to lean on that a little bit. So the Broncos forced Lamar to stay in the pocket this game. They basically gave up on their pass rush to do so. They said, hey, our goal is not to get to Lamar on every play. Our goal is to keep Lamar from getting outside the tackles or escaping through the pocket. And they said, hey, we're going to keep you in the pocket. And Lamar responded by having one of his best passing days that I've seen him have in the NFL. It's not something you see every single week, but this particular week, Lamar had it. He was 22 of 37. It's only 59%. Like 60% is really kind of the bare minimum you want to see out of a quarterback, but he was clean with it and everything that he did. He threw for 316, threw a touchdown, no picks. He was sacked 3 times, ended with a passer rating of 96.2. He rushed 7 times for only 28 yards, which the Broncos thought was a win. However, I want to go back to a key point. The Broncos gave up some of their pass rush on purpose to keep Lamar in the pocket. It was a very soft pass rush that basically said, get to the QB if you can, but no matter what you do, don't let Lamar run by you. And this was key because it allowed the receivers more time to be able to get open, and it left Lamar with a good amount of time to throw. And that helps a quarterback that we've talked about hasn't been a top level quarterback in throwing the ball and reading a defense and finding it and getting rid of it. And giving him that extra time, he's definitely a capable passer. I said it on the pregame show on Sunday that the Broncos would need to plan on a soft pass rush or a strong but disciplined pass rush, and they're going to have to make a choice between those two options. And what I wanted them to go with is, hey, get after the quarterback. Just be smart about how you get after it. They said, hey, we're not going to get after the quarterback. We're going to keep our eyes up and make sure that he's not running anywhere. And they clearly went with a softer pass rush. And in hindsight, it's easy to say that doesn't seem like the right decision because Lamar laced them up. And then Denver couldn't get the offense going on top of that. So just as the defense wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't good enough. And when Teddy went down, like it wasn't really firing with Teddy. And then Locke came in the game, and it just looked abysmal. And you can see very clearly why the Broncos went with Teddy to start the season. Locke just was not ready. You can say he didn't have reps with the ones and didn't get to practice all week. Like, to me, that's bullshit. Jump in, do your job. You're a professional quarterback. Like, you wanted this starting job. You better be prepared to take it at any given shot, because as soon as Teddy falters, you need to be ready to jump in and earn that spot. So I do think it's important to mention that the Denver offense is hurting a little bit. So both of the guards are backups, and they're both inexperienced. They've lost Judy. They've lost Hambler. both of those are hurting the offense because they were trying to beat Baltimore with Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and swapping out Hinton and David Moore. And I think that's where I personally underestimated this game this week. I should have dug deeper into the passing options without Judy and Hambler. I thought that they were going to be fine because I thought, oh, Hinton's all right. Sutton's still a good option. Sutton's not a 1. Tim Patrick's not a 2. Hinton's okay as a 3. David Moore's okay as a 3. But against a Baltimore team, that's going to be super hard for them to be able to win with. Gabe, Fangio barely ran nickel this game. Even at the end of the game, it was like 6 guys on the line of scrimmage. Exactly. You're 100%. They said, we're not going to let Lamar's legs beat us. If you can beat us passing, fine. We can live with that. But again, the defense, it's not like the defense played poorly, right? Like it's not like Denver just got absolutely smacked. I mean, the Ravens scored 23 points. They didn't go crazy. But without an offense, it makes it really, really hard. And I would have loved to have seen the offense get going because I would have loved to see the Ravens have to try to push their offense. But the way that it was, they were just never really, they never had to be concerned about Denver coming back and testing them. Let's see what else. Try to get through. I need to skip some of my notes here. So we talked about the injuries on offense. Denver on defense, they don't have Chubb, they don't have Jewel. Both of those guys being out hurts them. And I wouldn't say, like, I'm not making excuses because Baltimore has plenty of injuries of their own, but Denver isn't as deep as Baltimore is, and they need all of their people healthy, or they're not going to look very good. So, like, for me, what everybody wanted to know from this week is, after a preseason schedule of 2 New York teams and the Jags, like, is Denver for real against Baltimore? And I think I have to say the jury's still out. I feel like they can be for real, but if Judy and Hamler are both out for an extended period, then no, and they're not for real. And then with Locke throwing them the ball, like, no, absolutely not. They're not for real. I think Baltimore proved that they're for real because I did have a couple questions about them of are they able to play in tough situations and when teams are going to force Lamar to throw. And they played against a very good defense, still put up 23 points, which is respectable. I think that might have been the most amount of points that the Broncos have allowed all season. If I remember, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. If I remember correctly, hang on, I want to see something real quick. I mean, it's the Giants, Jets, and Jags, right? So it's not like Denver faced Murderers Row. No, so 27, 23, 26, 23. Okay, so they're pretty consistent. They basically allowed 23 to 27 points every single game. Good to know. So yeah, I think for me, it's more about Baltimore looks for real. Lamar looks, if Lamar plays like he did in this game the rest of the year, Baltimore is going to be hard to beat. And if Marquise Brown actually catches the ball, he's going to continue to get open. He just has to catch the ball. And if he does that, he's going to be a huge player in this offense. And I know everybody's excited about Bateman. We'll see. It'll be nice for them to get an extra weapon, but it feels like Baltimore is going to play their game. Is going to play to their opponent every single week. And against good teams, I'm like this week against Pittsburgh, AFC North matchup, I don't think that Ben's going to be able to get it done. But against Las Vegas, no, sorry, that's Broncos. I was like, wait, they don't play them this week. Baltimore. So Baltimore this week gets Indianapolis. That's it. Yeah. So the Monday night game. This is the game that I'm going to be able to go to bed by halftime in. So Baltimore is going to get an easy one. Then they get the Chargers. And I feel like that's going to be a game where Derwin James is going to be in the box the entire time watching what Lamar's doing, and he's going to be coming after him. So one of the few players that I feel like can keep up with him. So yeah, Baltimore's for real. Denver, the jury's still out. I think they should be okay against Pittsburgh. Problem is with Drew Lock, it makes it a little bit tighter. It makes it a tight game. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if they could win that game with Drew Lock. If Lock looks like he does, I will say Teddy's making it through concussion protocol, and the Broncos feel like he's going to be available for the game. So we'll know a little bit more tomorrow, but the Broncos are hopeful that he's there. And then I don't know if you guys saw this, but I'll say one thing. Who the QB for Pitt this week? It's Ben still. There was actually a comment that Tomlin made of Ben still gives us the best chance to win, and that was meant as a promotion of Ben, but really it's more of an indictment against Rudolph and Haskins. So, I mean, is he ever healthy, Gabe? Wasn't sure if he is healthy. I don't know. He hasn't been healthy in years, I feel like. But to your point, he's healthy enough that he's going to be playing in this game, yes. So I don't know if you guys saw it at the end of the game for Denver-Baltimore. The Broncos, so if you don't know, the Broncos are losing. Instead of Baltimore kneeling it, they run the ball on the last snap to keep their streak of 100-yard games going. Like, they've had this streak going for like 2 years now or something like that. And instead of just kneeling the ball, they go to run it to get to eclipse and keep that going. The Broncos were offended, said it was in poor form. And there were a lot of people who were up in arms over the Ravens not just kneeling it. And so here's my take on it. So what? I subscribe to the idea that if you don't want me dancing in the end zone, then don't let me score. Look, is it in good spirit of the game? Absolutely not. But if you're going to get your feelings hurt that easily, then maybe football isn't the game for you. So move on, forget it. It's not that big of a deal. And sure, you want to do player safety? Well, there were clips of Fangio throwing it, using Drew Lock to throw it up against the Dolphins on the last play of the game to run the clock out. So you can't really claim player safety if you've done the same thing in the past by doing something like that. So yeah, so Fangio has no room to talk because he's done the same thing before. And like I said, don't get beat. Don't put the other team in a position where they're trying to keep that streak going, or in a position where they can kneel on the ball, and that won't happen. Win your football games. It's that simple. All right, Pitt Green Bay. So Steelers Packers. So Pitt's O-line and Big Ben looking like he's moving in quicksand is an issue. That is a bad combination. Like, you have a quarterback that can't move and an O-line that can't block for him. But it's basically it's literally a statue in the pocket that people are just running through the offensive line like a sieve. So that's going to be a problem and is going to continue to be a problem. It sucks because the Steelers are 2 years too late on figuring out a quarterback situation. Like, they completely botched that. Now, I will say this before we go down that path. Ben's throws are much better this week. His arm looked a little more like it had a little bit more juice in it. 2 weeks ago, he looked like he shouldn't start another game. This week was still bad, but he made a couple of throws that it looked like he couldn't have made earlier this year or in the game before. So it was good to see that. But the Steelers screwed up the draft, man. They needed to start moving on a quarterback last year. Not last draft, but 2 years ago. And they still didn't do it this year. And now they're likely a year or two out from finding a sufficient QB unless they're just willing to destroy their draft and move up for a rookie. But from what I've seen, the college QBs just this year aren't terrific. Or from what I've been told, the college QBs coming out aren't terrific. It's not like we have Lawrence and Lance and Fields and Mac Jones and all of that stuff. So now I will say something interesting happened. There was a nice little clip from this game where Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin kind of gave each other a little wink nod. Little, what's up, bro? Like not just like a hey, how's it going? This was like a hey, we're boys type of nod. Like two dudes that have been hanging out for a while type of nod. I find that interesting, and I'm probably making drama out of nothing. But that was the first time when I said, huh, what about Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh? That could make a lot of sense. He would love playing for Tomlin. Tomlin would give him a pretty good amount of control over that offense. He'd say, "Hey, you go run your offense. I'll run the defense. You just follow my lead in terms of how I want to manage a game, and then you can run whatever offense you want." So that to me was I wonder if there's something there. So I'm gonna be paying attention. And here's the thing: is the only reason that I thought that and then went, huh, is because it actually makes a lot of sense. Big Ben's gonna be done after this year. Rodgers is out of Green Bay after this year. Like he's either gonna be released or traded. And there's no QBs in the draft, according to all the draft experts. So, or none that are overwhelmingly good, right? At least at this point, it sounds like. So, makes a lot of sense for Mr. Rodgers to end up in Pittsburgh. So that's something I want to keep an eye on, but something that was interesting. On defense, so TJ Watt didn't look completely healthy. And that's tough because the Steelers need him. Like they need him to be 100% healthy. So much so that like they won't win games without TJ Watt. The last couple of weeks have showed me how important he really is to this team. And he really should be considered for an MVP candidate if they win games, just based on the fact that he's more important to this team than Big Ben is right now. So he's got to be healthy, and if he's not healthy, I would pick against the Steelers every single week. There was a field goal that was blocked and returned for a touchdown, called back for offsides. It wasn't. Joe Hayden was absolutely not offsides. It was a 10-point swing towards the end of the half, and while that stings for the Steelers, this never really looked like a game that they had a chance in. Like even with that, like it would have put them. I think it would have put them close. But they still wouldn't have been in the lead. The Steelers still wouldn't have been in the lead. And I think the Packers were getting the ball after the half anyways. So it's not, I don't think that it changed the game in any way. But it could have. It potentially could have. Green Bay defense allowed more from Ben than what I thought they would, which kind of reignited my concern that they're not very good. And that they're kind of regressing back to being bad after one good week versus the 49ers. So again, not really say we can say that the 49ers are a good offense at this point. So it could just be a mirage that the Packers put up last week. But this week, the Bengals may be an interesting test, as I think Burrow and company could light it up against Green Bay's defense. And if that happens, then we're just back to questioning Green Bay's legitimacy as a Super Bowl contender, because if they don't have a defense, I mean, it's great to have Aaron Rodgers, but we've seen that Aaron Rodgers can't continue to do it all on his own. He needs some help from Joe Barry in that defense. And then Devontae Adams is just ridiculous. It's hard not to think of him as the best wide receiver in the NFL. He's just so special, man. He could do anything and everything. And then Randall Cobb had a good day too, had 2 TDs. And his return to Lambeau. So the offense is going to be fine, but if that defense continues to get mauled, it might be a short stint in the playoffs for the Pack. Gabe, all right, let's see. Ben finally caring about mechanics. There was a clip where Sims or something that he didn't care because he was just so good. I mean, it was never really Ben's game, right? Like Ben ended up winning. He typically ends up winning on plays because of his size, his ability to move in the pocket, keep the play alive, throwing deep downfield. Like that's how he was successful. He doesn't have that repertoire anymore. Like he's that pitcher that used to have a 99-mile-an-hour fastball and the 12-6 curveball, and now all of a sudden the fastball is 92, 93, and the curveball now all of a sudden doesn't dip as much and isn't as much of an off-speed pitch. Now he's going to have to get a little crafty with it, but he doesn't have his haymaker anymore, and he's gonna have to be crafty about it, and he's gonna need some offensive play calling that's gonna need to be able to help. Like, they got to run the ball. Keep saying this. I know we talk about it every week, and I'm like anti-run on Twitter, but certain teams need to run the ball, certain teams need to pass the ball. It just all depends on context, situation, game plan, matchups, all of that stuff. So I'm just really interested to see how they end up playing this with Ben for the rest of the year. 2023-24, now with viewers are probably the classes. Oh, you're talking. I see. I don't know much about the college class right now. Are we sure Rodgers and Tomlin are also not trolling too? I mean, they could be, but they looked like they were boys. That's not like a. So I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you walk by, somebody that you, so say you're crossing somebody in the hallway, if it's somebody you don't know but you feel like you need to acknowledge, the way you do it is you go like, hey. If it's somebody you know, it's the opposite. You go, hey. It's chin up, head up to somebody you know, and it's like this. Like, that was definitely a chin up for both of them. Like, what's up? Like, they know each other. So I don't know. We'll see. Hard to run the ball when the O-line sucks. Yeah. Well, that's why they got to get creative. Put Najee Harris on the outside. There are more ways to run the ball in the NFL than just running the ball. That sounds completely stupid. And if you put that on Twitter in quotes, I'm going to sound like an idiot and I'm going to sound like an asshole. But the reality is that running the ball is the worst way to run the ball in the NFL, unless you have a ridiculous offensive line. The best way to run the ball is to throw the ball to the edges, to your wide receivers on smoke routes and screens and tight end screens and stuff like that. These little tiny completions that get you 3, 4, 5 yards, and are easy completions so that it's not like you're likely to end up with a 50% completion rate on them. These are little easy throws that get the ball out quick, help an offensive line, still get you 3 or 4 yards. That's a run play. Like, me taking a hike and turning and doing that is a run play. So, I mean, it's the same thing. The Patriots did it really, really well with during the Edelman and Amendola era, when they didn't have any receivers that could stretch the field. Like, teams have figured out that good teams have figured out that there's ways to do that. Bucks haven't figured out that they can, quote, run the ball by throwing it to the edges like that. So I don't know. I'm fascinated to see what happens with Green Bay next week. Because Green Bay is gonna. I don't know what to think about Green Bay yet, and I don't know what to think, and most of that's because I don't know what to think about San Francisco. So Green Bay's got Cincinnati this week. That's a fascinating matchup. I bet Green Bay's favored, but I'm curious as to how much. Green Bay. You can tell I haven't really done a ton of. Normally I would be started on all the games this week, but my days got pushed back. I'll do a ton of work tomorrow on the Rams Seahawks game. Did I miss this? Am I an idiot? Chat, you'll stop whenever I see it. I'm totally missing this. Giants, Cowboys. Packers, Bengals. There we go. Okay, Packers -3 in Cincinnati. So they think the Packers are a 6-point dog. I don't. Nope. Give me Bengals. This feels. I mean, here's the thing. If this feels like a game where it's probably going to be closer, because the Packers probably won't be able to get a pass rush. They haven't been terrific. So, Tampa Bay, New England, you going over? Yeah, it's the next game on my list. This Bengals Packers game is this will be a fun one. 3-1 versus, what are Packers, 2-2? No, 3-1. Packers are 3-1. They only lost that game to New Orleans which they probably shouldn't have. Maybe I'm just underestimating the Packers. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah. They lost that game 38-3 to New Orleans first week. Jameis threw 5 touchdowns, but threw for like 140 yards. That was just a weird stuff happens week 1, and it's not predictive. So maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just off on Green Bay. All right, we'll see. I'll take a look at it and do some more work on it tomorrow and get a better feel for it. All right. So I would love to say I'm going to get through this one quickly, but probably not. Let's see. We have 2 more games. We got through Pitt, Baltimore. Oh no, I missed a bunch of games. Let me make sure. We did Indy, Miami, Cleveland, Minnesota. Let's hit. Sorry, Gabe. I'm gonna do Tennessee, New York Jets real quick because this one should be easy. So I actually thought the Titans. So for Titans Jets, I thought the Titans would still pull off the win even without AJ Brown and Julio Jones, and they still almost did. Thing that irritated me about this is the Jets celebrated like they won the Super Bowl, and it's hard to set a winning culture like that. Like, it's great, be happy, you got your first win as a head coach, terrific, but you got to set the tone like you've been there before. And I don't mean to sound like a boomer or like a wet blanket, but like that needs to be the standard mode of operation. We are supposed to win. That's how you win, is you have the mindset of, this is my game to win, not my game to lose. If you're playing like you're going to lose, like, you celebrate like that whenever you accidentally win. And by the way, you won because the Titans were missing a huge part of their starters on both sides of the ball. Like, you got lucky this week. So let's not go overboard. And they still took the game to OT, and the Titans still almost won. And if the Titans were smarter about it, they would have ended it earlier. Like, that didn't make any sense whatsoever. But I breezed through this game just due to lack of time. I will say it's nice to see Zach Wilson drop a few dimes. He had time to throw against the Titans. He ended up with a nice line, 21-34, 297, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Only had 1 sack, which is great because that's huge. He had 1 marvelous throw to the sideline where he just dropped it in a bucket. That was while kind of, I think it was rotating left, like moving to his left. It's just beautiful. The one big highlight for the Jets is that I think Jamison Crowder lifts this offense up a notch. Him being on the field helped Wilson a ton. Like, Wilson got rid of the ball faster, was quicker with it, more confident when his throws. And I think that has everything to do with Crowder being out there and him knowing that he always had a guy that he could go to and to target in a pinch. He was 7 for 9, 61 and a touchdown when targeting Crowder. And that's exactly what you're looking for, what they were looking for to help Wilson. Like, he needs that just based on the way this offense is built, that bad offensive line. The Titans will continue to be dampened by injuries. We'll see if Browns and Jones get back this week, or at least one of them, because that'd be huge. If they don't have them, I don't know that they're going to be able to beat many teams, even with Derrick Henry, who just seems inhuman. Titans are just hard to pin down because of those injuries. Like, they've had injuries on and off. They played some good games. They played some bad games. One thing I know is Derrick Henry is going to continue to dominate the snaps and carries, and he's going to continue to dominate the game. Nobody seems able to stop him. Tannehill can absolutely not take 7 sacks like he did this week. And a lot of those are on him, not necessarily just on the O-line. The O-line was bad too, don't get me wrong. But he's got to be aware and not take all of those sacks. The Titans are, at this point, they're just not a team I have a ton of confidence in, but they do play Jacksonville this week. Jacksonville's obviously a little distracted, so hopefully the Titans get back on the right side of the win-loss column this week. Interesting matchup this week for the Jets. It's a battle of bad teams, and that could potentially determine the order for a top 3 pick between them and the Falcons. So not really sure who wins that game yet, but it's kind of up in the air. Feels like a 50-50 shot. All right, so that's that one. Gabe, I will do Tampa Bay, New England. Even though it's not next, I will do it just for you. All right, Tampa Bay, New England. Tampa Bay 19, Pats 17. So Pats had 8 carries, minus 1 yards rushing. Pats throw it 42 times. If you had looked at that line and said, or if you had said that, hey, this is the line that's going to happen after the game, you would think that that the Patriots would have gotten beaten by 40 points. But Belichick remains the king of very weird stat lines because of his game plans. And we called this one we called this one spot on the money last week. And the rain certainly helped push the game towards what we had predicted, which was Bill basically said he wasn't going to let Tom throw deep, and they would give him the run and the short passes. Brady still snuck a few longer throws in there, but for the most part, the Pats defense clearly had one job: slow down Tom Brady in the passing game, and they did a pretty good job of that. I mean, Brady ended up with 22 of 43, so right at 50%, not terrific, not at all in line with how he normally plays. 269, mediocre, no touchdowns, no interceptions, sacked once. For Belichick, that's almost the perfect line. If he could have gotten one turnover, if he could have gotten one pick out of that, that would have been almost that would have been pretty much perfect line for Bill Belichick. I mean, when Brady throws for only 6.25 an attempt, like, Bill's going to be happy with that. And Steve Belichick, who the world became acquainted with on Sunday night, is going to be happy with that too. Fournette had 20 rushes for 91 yards. Ronald Jones went for 25 on 6 carries. And it's funny because I watched a lot of people say, hey, Lenny had a solid game. He had 4.5 a carry. They got a consistent run game going with Lenny. And I'm going, yeah, that's exactly what Bill Belichick wanted. And the Bucs played right into their hands. And like, the thing about it is like, when you're talking about running the football, you have to look at what the opportunity cost is when you rush 26 times with guys like Lenny and Rojo. That's 26 plays where you're not letting the best QB in the history of the NFL throw to a wide receiver core that can completely overwhelm pretty much every single secondary, especially the Pats secondary right now. Like, you're saying, hey, I don't want to take my biggest matchup advantage and press that. I want to hand off to Lenny and Rojo. That's what I want to do. That's how we're going to score on this team. And the Bucs played right into it. Like, the Bucs were happy to take it. And look, I get it. Like, they're scared of hanging their secondary out to dry. But the thing is nobody can keep up with your offense at this point. There's very few teams, and you already faced one of them and you beat them. In the Cowboys, there are very few teams that can keep up with your offense. Missing Gronk hurt. Don't get me wrong. Like, that was a big miss for them. The tight ends didn't play particularly well, but they still could have thrown the ball all over the field and scored a lot more. And look, again, rain definitely played into it. It was a nasty weather game. Both coaches actually said that the weather wasn't that bad and it wasn't a big deal. And I'm going to call bullshit on that. Like, it absolutely was not the case. It definitely was a big deal. The thing is like, I've had some time to think about this, and I'm almost to the point where, like, I've almost wrapped my head around what happened with the play calling on Sunday night with Leftwich. The problem is I'll never be able to, like, I might be able to understand it a little bit better now, but I'll still never be able to forgive them for it. Like, I think what irritates me is that the most about it is that we saw this coming. Like, some random dude on the internet over here talking on Twitch said, hey, the Pats can't play with the Bucs. They're going to come out in a too high shell for most of the game, which is exactly what they did, and hope that the Bucs run the ball. And every time you do, it's a win for the Pats. And it's not like it wasn't obvious. I wasn't the only one saying this. There were smart football people that were saying it. I had somebody tweet me, well, Michael Irvin said this on Thursday, said this on Sunday morning. And I said, that's fantastic. I said it on Thursday. Like, we knew this was what was going to happen, and the Bucs still missed it. And that's the thing, is either the Bucs didn't see it or they saw it and played into it anyways, which would really piss me off. Like, that's just willful ignorance. And I don't get it. I get super irritated just thinking about it, because if I see it, how can Leftwich not see it? How can the Bucs not see that? And that gets me super irritated and super fired up. Like, I said 3/4 of the way through the game that the Bucs might win, but they don't deserve it because they got outcoached by a mile in this game. There's no reason whatsoever that this should have been that close, except that the Bucs, and specifically Leftwich, got outcoached and allowed it to be that close. They went super conservative, and when they pushed the ball and went for those deep opportunities, they were there. There was a couple missed catches. That absolute laser that Brady threw to Antonio Brown on third down, like I think it was 3rd and 8, absolute laser that Brown drops in the end zone. I do that all night long. Don't do that on third down. Don't get yourself in 3rd and 8 because you tried to run the ball twice and then have to make up a good play. I actually think they threw on 2nd down if I remember correctly, but on the 2nd down on the play before that. But like that particular throw didn't have to be that hard. If they push that on 1st and 2nd down, they don't have to worry about 3rd down like that. And it was so frustrating to watch. I considered turning off the game simply because I got so mad at the Bucs play calling. It made no sense whatsoever. There's no reason it had to be that close. But in the end, the Bucs got lucky because Bill ended up making a bad decision to kick it versus go for it on 4th and 3 at the end of the game. Like, I have no idea what Belichick was thinking whenever he said, yeah, let's send Nick Folk in. Let's kick it from 56 in the rain. And here, the other issue with that decision is there's still a minute left on the clock. I think it would have been like 59 seconds or something like that. And the Bucs still had 1 or 2 timeouts. Like, the chances of hitting that kick in the first place are slim in clear weather, but in the rain, even worse. And Tom Brady can get his team in position for a game-winning kick as well as any QB in the league. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is better outside of that. And give Nick Folk credit. He damn near pulled it off. Like, he had the distance, but the wind just pulled it left a little bit too much, and it obviously doinked. And here's the other thing. The Pats are moving the ball all night long. So they end up in 4th and 3 and decide to kick it, right? Pats had no problem moving the ball. Mac Jones was 31 of 40, 275, 2 touchdowns, only had 1 pick. He was under duress a lot, but he played pretty well. He did have another play earlier in the first half that should have been a pick that got dropped. Mac Jones even had a streak of 20 straight completions in this game. Like, he's fully capable of getting 3 yards on 4th down in a tough situation. And the Bucs were not playing that tight of coverage. Like, that should have been an easy give me on 4th down for them. Like, he's totally capable of getting 3 yards in a tough 4th down situation. I still just don't understand any of the decisions that were made in this game. And I sit and watch Brandon Staley make beautiful decisions in pretty much everything that he does. And then I get to watch these 2 knuckleheads decide to do this. Like, go get the 4th down, go get it, because you've been doing it all night long. Then you can run some more clock, get closer for a better field goal attempt. And what did we say? So what did we say last week? What was the one thing that I harped on? Coaches need to stop playing for long field goals. It fails too often. You know what? Maybe that's the thing. Maybe we need to stop blaming kickers for late game misses. Maybe it's not the kicker's fault. Maybe it's the kicker shouldn't be taking 50-plus yard field goals to end the game. It's the coach's fault that they didn't give him an opportunity to kick a 30-yarder instead. It's not Nick Folk's fault that he missed a 56-yarder. It's Bill Belichick's fault that he didn't get a chance to kick a 40-yarder instead, because a 40-yarder would have been good. The Pats played a good game, like all around, outside of their O-line. Their O-line looked painful. Mac was getting the ball out quick, but still getting he was still getting tapped up quite a bit in the pocket. Judon played really well. Albert Breer said it perfect. With Stephon Gilmore out, Judon is the best player on this team right now. Like, he played really well, turned Donovan Smith back into bad Donovan, put him in his old form, gave up negative plays every other snap. Like, and then the other thing is, so Richard Sherman, we all know, signed midweek. He ends up getting the start due to injuries. The one thing to call out with Richard Sherman is, look, he didn't play particularly well, but this dude was literally signed off the street 3 days before. Bucs effectively put him in cover 3 zone all night long. No matter what else they were doing in coverage, Sherman was in cover 3 zone. So he's got his guy outside leverage. He's making sure that nobody gets deep and gets past him. He as long as nobody gets past him, that's his job. Keep him in front, use that outside leverage to push the guy in. and make sure he's moving towards a safety and just don't get beat deep. That's his job. The problem is that the Pats figured this out. It wasn't hard. The Pats figured it out, and they started running ends off of that outside. So now you've got Richard Sherman, who's now trying to force a guy to the inside, and then they're doing exactly that. And they're running, and the rest of the coverage isn't there because they're not running cover 3 everywhere else. They're running something else, but with Richard Sherman in cover 3. So they're breaking these inside routes, and then Richard Sherman seeing Mac Jones. So cornerbacks are taught to break. So when the quarterback has the ball here, when they see those hands come apart, that's when corners move, right? That's when they know that, like, hey, ball's about to come out. I need to get to the spot, try to beat the guy there. So Sherman is reading this, and they're breaking these inside routes right in front of his face. Now he's already in a negative position. He's got a guy running away from him that he's a step or two behind. And oh, by the way, Richard Sherman ain't a spring chicken anymore. He's already a step or two behind because of the coverage that they put him in. Everybody's going, oh, Richard Sherman's playing awful. He's terrible. He can't keep up with these guys. Well, you know what? Richard Sherman wasn't put in a position to be successful. And there's good reason for that. I totally understand why they did it. Like, they wanted to make sure that he didn't end up making a mental mistake that ended up for 6 points. Like, if he messes up, if quarterbacks, we talked about it a little bit last week, if quarterbacks mess up, it's 6 points. Like, that, a blown coverage is 6 points for the other team. So I get why they did it, but the Pats played off of it. So you can't really just say, hey, Sherman was awful and played bad. There's more to it than that. And it's smart planning by the Pats, but the Bucks either weren't able or weren't interested in adjusting for a bigger fear of giving up a big play, it seems, which probably smart just based on the way the game went and it being, in the rain like that. But it led to a lot of easy completions. And I will say, it's hard to say from the outside, but that's what it looked like to me and how they utilized Sherman and how the Pats decided to play. Like, there's a lot of assumptions there. So, and then the final thing I'll say on this game, if anyone needs a lesson in how to play cohesive football, this was a masterclass in it from Belichick. Like, the offense was protecting the defense, knowing that they weren't going to be able to cover all of those wide receivers and those weapons, even without Gronk. The defense was protecting the offense because they were playing that cover 2 shell. They were making sure that plays didn't go deep, trying not to give up the big play and the easy score. The offense used trick plays to sneak out those big gains. And then they ditched the run for short passes because those were effectively runs. So the defense knew that the Pats offense wasn't going to score a ton, especially in that weather. That's why they played the 2 high safeties. And for the most part, it kept the big plays from happening. The Bucks did have a couple opportunities that they missed and made sure it didn't turn into a shootout. And that's how you play as a team. You know what the strengths and weaknesses are of the team that you're playing, and you build an offensive and defensive game plan to be able to manage to that. The Bucks are not doing the Pats. They absolutely did that. The Bucks had no idea how to do that. They have a complete matchup advantage on offense, and they did not take advantage of it. And that is just terrible coaching. Just a terrible game plan and terrible coaching. You still think running Ronald Jones up the back of your center is the best play for your offense? And again, weather, I get it. Here's the thing, even in clear weather, they're still doing it. They're still going to do that because they've done it all year. They've continued to do it. They figured it out last year towards the end of the year. And then they went, holy shit, we can put up 10 touchdowns on everybody if we just let Tom Brady throw to these magnificent receivers that we've got. But here's Belichick over there just figuring out, like, hey, you know what? Let's make sure that they don't throw deep. Let them throw the underneath. We'll invite the run. And if they run for 100 yards, we're probably going to be in this game towards the end. We'll be just fine. So they managed to pace the game well, and it was beneficial to them based on the matchups that they had. It was a clinic in coaching by Belichick in so many facets up until he chose to go for that 56-yarder. And listen, and that's the margin of error in games like this for good teams. One bad decision, and it can cost you the game. And that's why analytics are so important. Any teeny tiny edge that analytics can give you is massively important, because in against good teams, that margin of error is so small. And the impact of those decisions is so critically important to the outcome of the game. It's why I've raved about Brandon Staley, who as a guy who gets it. Like, he understands that data can help you make better decisions. It doesn't have to tell you exactly what you have to do in a certain situation, but it helps inform you in that particular situation as something that will help you make better decisions. And when you're making more good decisions in tight ball games than the other guy, you're going to end up winning a lot of football games because of that. Even with lesser talent, it's going to give you an advantage. So I'm worried about the Bucs offense, man. I'm not concerned about the defense. Like, we all know what's wrong with the defense. They finally got some pressure, which was nice, but that New England offensive line is terrible. I just, injuries happen, and the secondary is painful and it sucks, but they have enough up front to be able to protect the secondary to a good degree. Todd Bowles knows how to claim, like how to mix it up and match and do what he needs to do. I have faith in Bowles and that defense to not be completely awful. I think the Bucs are like 18th, 19th in DVOA on defense right now. Like, everybody's like, oh, they're so bad. They're 19th in defensive DVOA. They're not bad. They're not good, but they're not bad either. But the offense is mostly healthy. Offensive line's healthy. Only guy out was Gronk. And yeah, it's a big deal, but if you don't push points, then so here's the thing. No matter what you do, that defense is going to give up points. Like, you can't run the ball. You can't. You're not going to take time off the clock by running the ball unless teams let you run the ball, which is exactly what the Pats did. And then sure, you're going to protect your defense a little bit, but teams are still going to be able to score on your defense. At this point, the Bucs need to make a decision and say, you know what? Fuck this. We're going to go put up 40 a game. Todd Bowles, your job is to only allow 39 points a game, because we know that we can put up 40 a game. Dallas is doing it. It's exactly what Dallas's game plan is. We're going to go put up 40 points a game, try to keep up with us. Chiefs are the same way. Chiefs have done this for 2 years, 3 years. We're going to go put up 35, 40 points a game. Let's see who can keep up with this. You think you got the offense? Good luck, because we're going to create turnovers on defense. Yeah, our defense may not be that good, but we're going to get turnovers out of it. That's what the Bucs need to do. They need to turn around and get after it. Like, this is an open letter to Byron Leftwich. Put the ball in the air. I don't care if Brady throws 60 times a game. Throw him till his arm falls off. Don't care. He could take it. He's a robot anyways. It's not going to bother him. Ice up. Like, let him be. That TB12's working for him. Let him throw it. But you cannot score 17 points against a bad Patriots defense and be okay with that. That's and to play into their hand. That's the thing that frustrates me the most, is that they play directly into what the Patriots did. And we all saw it coming from a mile away. Random dude over here on Twitter, sitting in his office at home in Tampa, said, hey, guess what Bill's going to do this weekend? And guess what? Bill did exactly that. And it's like, Leftwich never had a fucking clue that was coming. I don't get it. I don't get it. Don't get it. All right, sorry, I'm frustrated. That one got me fired up. I was so mad that the Bucs actually won that game. I was hoping they lost. Hope it would have opened their eyes. A win probably won't do that. That loss would have been a good lesson for them. So, all right, let's see what we got. Gabe, appreciate all the comments, brother. Appreciate you hanging out all night. I don't get kicking that field goal for Bill other than he trusted Folk more. I won't want to give Brady 50 seconds to win the game with a field goal, even if to open the end of that even if to the open end of that stadium. It's actually a really good point. Open end of that stadium has some swirling wind, is a lot harder to hit a field goal in. It's a really good point, actually, Gabe, to call that out. I'm with you. Nothing about that decision said that was the right decision. Nick Folk's what, 43 now? How old is Nick Folk? I need to woosah. Let's see. Oh, he's 36. He's not that old. He's all right. But all right. So Nick Folk's 36. They signed him off of as a free agent. Like he was on the street. They signed him. I mean, I give him credit. He damn near nailed a 56 yarder in the rain. But that's the whole point. Like if you get 10 yards further, that's a good kick. That goes in. So didn't Leftwich have this issue last year? Yes. Yep. 100%. At the beginning of the year, they decided they wanted to try to run on first down. And then Lenny or Rojo or let's see, who was their third down back last year? It wasn't McCoy. It was just Lenny or Rojo. What's his face? Golden got in as well. Leftwich had this exact problem last year. They couldn't figure it out until week 13. Once they figured it out in week 13, you know what? That's going to be my thing. Anytime anybody says, oh, well, they didn't have the off season to figure it out. And I'm like, hey, look, they're in week 5 of 2021 and they still don't seem to have figured it out. So I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're looking at right now. It's willful ignorance at this point. I want to do this. I don't care if they're going to take this away from me. I want to do this. It's not knowing you're like, look, it's kind of like, look, I know that I'm not a model good looking, which means I better have a good personality if I'm going to go try to talk to a girl, right? Like my wife, way over my head. You see my wife? She's absolutely gorgeous. No shot of me ever to get her with looks. Like it had to be through personality. But I got to know that about myself. I got to know that, hey, I'm not going to walk up to a girl and she's like, oh yeah, he's sexy. That's not the way it happens. Not that I know that that's not my A game. So I've got to go in with a good personality and win it that way. And the Bucs seem to be like, hey, we have no idea what our winning strategy is on offense. We actually think it's running the ball. Anyways, all right, we got to move on from this game. I'm going to continue to be. If KC was 19th in DVOR right now, DVOA, they'd be Super Bowl faves. Oh, 100% on D. Yep, Folk's still good. I mean, he might be. It's still a little early in the year to see. He's what, 10 of 11 so far. 10 of 11. The only one he missed was a 56 yarder. So yeah, maybe he is good. I just there's a reason. I feel like there was a reason he was on the street whenever everybody needs good kickers, right? So. All right. Anyways, let's move on from that game. Clearly a little bit more passionate about that one. So what other games did we miss? Talk about Carolina, Dallas, Cleveland, Minnesota, Giants, New Orleans. Let's get through this quick. Giants. I know I've been like crushing on the Giants. They crushing in terms of like being bad about them, right? I know I've been very, very hard on the Giants. The thing is the Giants haven't actually played that well. I think the players have played well. I think the coaching staff has not done a good job. And that hurts them. Daniel Jones looks like a bona fide quarterback. He's played extremely well, continues to get better. That's a fantastic thing. The defense, not particularly great. I will say the offensive line, the last couple of the offensive line has looked a little bit better than what I thought. Which is a good thing. I thought that they were going to be atrocious. They're not. They're, who's it? Thompson, I think, looked pretty good the other night. The Giants are going to win a few games. They're going to win a handful of games. I think they're not going to win as many games as the offense probably should, because I do think Daniel Jones, if he plays like this all year, they should definitely win games. So just based on all of that, fascinated to see what the Giants do. Their corners they think their corners are way better than what they really are. But the real story of this Giants New Orleans game is so first of all, New Orleans missed a couple opportunities. There was a play where Jameis hits, I think, a 63 yarder for a touchdown that gets negated by a penalty by holding call. Very next play, they bring in Taysom Hill, who throws a pick. It was a 14-point swing. There was a couple plays that didn't go the Saints' way, that went the Giants' way. The Saints' defense was not good in this game. They just were not good enough. I get it. This is why I'm coming out of this game with a higher opinion of the Giants, because I still think that the New Orleans defense is solid, but the Giants played pretty well on offense against them. So um, I would, picking New Orleans games is going to be hard. They seem to be somewhere in between of this. I want to let Jameis eat and throw it deep in certain parts of the field, and then other parts they're like, nope, don't, throw your little check downs. They couldn't get the running. New Orleans couldn't get the running game going, which seems to be their Achilles heel. If they can get the running game going, they can win. If they don't get the running game going, they lose. So how that ends up playing out the rest of the year is hard to call, because Jameis could be the guy that wins it or a guy that gives it away. So ultimately I think that this is a game that New Orleans probably should have won overall, but the Giants do get their first win. Give them credit. They probably deserved a win earlier in the year. They probably deserved that win against Atlanta. Probably deserved the win against Washington. Just couldn't pull it out because their coaching staff makes bad decisions. So I don't think that they're terrible in terms of what they can do on offense. I still don't trust that particular defense. Offensive line's better than we thought, and Daniel Jones isn't a bad quarterback. He's played pretty well this year. So that's really all I want to say about that one. All right, I think we got 1, 2. All right, we got 3 games left. We're gonna get through these. We're gonna get through these in 15 minutes. Is what we're gonna do. KC Philly. All right, so Chiefs Eagles. So again, we mentioned this earlier. I think it's fascinating that the Chiefs are now ranked number 1 in DVOA on offense and number 32 on defense. Mahomes shows why people still love him. He has a 5 TD game. 5 TD game also showed me why I'm still saying that he needs to get it together, tame the turnovers. But here's the thing. The offense, what I realized this week is this offense is built to let Pat be aggressive. Like they push this with Pat. It's not like they're trying to hold him back from being aggressive and try to keep him from making bad decisions. Like they had shovel passes and underhand passes, and I don't think they probably specifically taught like the underhand pass on that play. Like when they're running that play in practice, I don't feel like they probably taught him, hey, you should probably throw this underhand. It's probably something that like Mahomes put flair on it. It's possible it's taught that way, but it really feels like that's some Mahomes flair. But they ran a couple of shovel passes inside the 5. They're not afraid to let Mahomes gamble, and they therefore feel like they're better on offense. And it tells me they're willing to live with the mistakes that he makes. Like they're like, hey, we're going to let you live on the edge because you're going to come out on top more often than not. And you're not going to be too bad about making stupid mistakes. They fully trust him, as they should, because he's phenomenal. But that also means that Mahomes needs to know and understand the risks that he's taking and the situations that he's in, and those situations in which he's taking those risks. Because he can get away with those mistakes against the Eagles, but he can't get away with them against the Chargers. And that's something that he's going to have to understand, because his team can't overcome it if he turns it over against against teams like the Chargers. I mean, I think what stood out to me is how well the Chiefs' offensive line played. I really loved watching them get nasty in this game, because I think Philly has a really good front 4. But that right side of the offensive line, Humphrey at center and Smith at right guard, played incredibly well. And those are 2 rookies. They should, and that's the thing, as rookies, they should continue to get better. Again, it's not like Madden where everybody gets +2 every game, but they're going to have ups and downs. But there's some hope there. Really interested to see how they grow and how that line ends up turning out, because if they can play well, with Mahomes, like if they can play well, like they're going to continue to figure things out. I thought Thuney at left guard had a good game. The O line's coming together. The tackles are probably the worst part of the O line right now. And honestly, with Mahomes, that's not the worst thing. As long as they're good enough to redirect the guy in front of them, Mahomes can work against them. Like Mahomes can work around them in the pass game. So I think that's the way they're built now is fine against bad teams. Dillisk, welcome in. Appreciate the follow. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. Let's see. So yeah, Chiefs look great. So for Philly, listen, we could talk about Hurts all night. I'm not going to be hard on Hurts because he wasn't the reason that they lost. This defense is weak. This is one of the simplest game plans I've seen a defense play all season, probably even dating back to last season. Look, I get it that you can't blitz Mahomes. Like everybody knows you can't blitz Mahomes because he absolutely eats it up. But holy shit, you got to figure out something. You can't just play the same plays over and over on defense, not switch and not and allow them to dictate matchups. Like, so first of all, Philly's linebackers slow and can't cover. Secondary, not terrific. The defense is the problem that I saw in this game over and over again is when you get linebackers on Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and safeties on Tyreek Hill, and you can't figure out how to not make that happen as much as it happened in this particular game, that has nothing to do with your players. Nothing to do with your players. That's how you know when it's bad coaching. Because if you're putting a linebacker on Travis Kelce simply because you decided this is the defense I'm going to play, and all they have to do is motion Kelce over to the opposite side, like the Chiefs always do, and you let it happen over and over and over and over again, that's not on any of the players. It's not the fault. It's not the linebacker's fault that he can't cover Travis Kelce. It's the defensive coordinator's fault for letting that happen so many times. Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill and like him to end up on a safety at one point, on a linebacker at one point, safeties throughout the game. I have no idea what the hell Jonathan Gannon is thinking. And then Sirianni doesn't really want to try to control the game on offense. Like he decides that he wants to try to keep pace with the Chiefs. You can't do that with a bad back seven on defense. It's insane. And we've talked about it. Good teams play in unison and alignment in all phases, and the Eagles aren't doing that. Devontae Smith is a fun player to watch, and he'll shine when he faces man teams because he's a hard cover and one-on-one, but he's not going to own a game. Like he's not a Julio Jones that's going to be able to take over a game and somebody that you can target on every single play because he's always open. Like I really thought that they would attempt to get the run game going more, but the Eagles seem completely uninterested in running the ball, which is just silly, especially with that defense. And before, whenever they had Brandon Graham, like that defensive line, it looked pretty good. But without Brandon Graham, it does not look the same. It does not look as good. And none of the coordinators are helping each other out right now. Sirianni looked like a savant in week one, but what we've learned is that Atlanta is awful. And since then, none of them have looked good. Like none of them have even been close to being good in the last few weeks. So I need to see some improvement from the coaching staff, or it's going to be a very long season for Philly because these players cannot overcome two bad coordinators like Sirianni and Gannon. I feel like I'm way too worked up right now. I guess I'm just tired of seeing bad football. All right, let's see. What else we got? We got Seattle, San Francisco. And then we got Vegas and Chargers. We'll leave on Vegas and Chargers. All right, Seattle, San Francisco. Seattle, San Francisco should be pretty quick. So Jimmy G ends up with a calf injury or calf injury. I don't know if it's actually a calf injury. I'm actually really curious to know if there really is an injury or if that's just what they're using to give Trey Lance a couple weeks to get in there. And remember, Kyle Shanahan wouldn't tell us who was starting the season, even though it was always Jimmy G. Like, he's super, super conservative about giving out that information. So for him to say, "Oh, Jimmy G, his calf injury might be okay. He might be able to play this week." He ain't playing this week. Trey Lance is the guy. So Trey Lance ends up getting the reps in the second half. Before we get to Lance and how he played, let's talk about the rest of the game. So Deebo Samuel, 78-yard TD. He was left wide open, as Seattle is one to do. Lance basically laid in an easy throw and let Deebo use his speed. So we were talking about the Fields throw where he kind of missed Mooney. Mooney had to come back for the ball and basically dive for it and kind of ruined a big play. He still caught it. It's kind of the same thing here. Lance didn't really make a great throw because Deebo was wide open. Like, it was blown coverage, and Trey Lance kind of like shorted it, and he ends up getting it there. There was enough there, but to get it there, but it wasn't a great throw. Yet Deebo still catches it, outruns the safety, takes it to the house, 78 yards. So that happens. Outside of that, 49ers only crossed midfield one other time. And I know people have talked about how bad the defense is and how they need a corner, but my question is where's the offense? Like, the defense we knew could potentially be a problem. The offense is not what we thought would be a problem. And a lot of it's on Shanny. Shanny's got to be better about what he's doing and the plays that he's calling. I think he still designs them really well, but he's not necessarily getting as many guys open as he used to. And then the other thing is Jimmy G up until this point hasn't been very accurate, which I thought he used to be really accurate, but this year not so accurate. Trey Lance, not particularly accurate in this game either. So I'm worried about the offense. Running backs are decimated. Kittle hasn't looked like the superstar that we've hoped. Ayuk hasn't shown up. Samuel seems to be the only guy on the offense that's playing at a high level right now. So, and this was a bad Seattle defense. So this is where I thought San Francisco would get it right. Now I'm really starting to worry about what the 49ers actually are. Seattle managed 234, only 149 passing yards by Russ. So what we kind of anticipated being a huge game, it ends up being a high score. Just a weird, not terrific amount of offense, which is not a lot of offense, but a lot of points, which is weird. So, and honestly, the whole difference in this game is Seattle was 4 for 4 on TDs in the red zone. Even a single stop by the Niners would have resulted in a win. It was weird. It was 7.5, and teams combined for 35 in the second half. But even in the second half, it seemed like neither of these offenses were firing on all cylinders. And the 49ers, very much probably worse. 2 for 14 on third down. That's incredibly painful. Really hard to win like that. I'm interested to see in how the offense evolves with Lance as a starter. Before you get to Lance, Seattle's defense just still wasn't amazing in this game, even though San Francisco's offense struggled. I didn't come out of this game thinking anything different about them than I did before. I think it was the San Francisco offense that was out of sync. Like, it's not like Seattle just all of a sudden got better on defense this week or had a great game plan. It was just San Francisco still can't figure out how they want to run an offense. Now, that brings us to Trey Lance. Trey Lance game, much like Mr. Fields' first game last week. He wasn't particularly accurate, didn't really see the field very well. His legs, I think Lance is going to be in a better spot because he's going to have better coaching around him. We're assuming that with Kyle Shanahan, they're going to put him in a better position to succeed. I think this offense transforms dramatically whenever Trey Lance is in. I think this becomes very much a running offense and not a run play action and like a lot of play action and still throw the ball a good amount of the time. I think this becomes like a 60% run offense. Because they're going to run the daylights out of Lance. He didn't seem like he was there in this particular game. Again, he came in the second half. Now he's going to have a full week to prepare. All of that good stuff, like all the caveats that we normally give to quarterbacks coming in, but he's still a rookie. Still need to give him time. I was kind of disappointed in how inaccurate he was, but he might be what this offense needs because they can't seem to get the pass game going. And they're going to need something different, something dynamic, and they've got Arizona this week. So that's a big one. If they can pull out a win against Arizona, and I think they're going to come out with basically what amounts to an option offense. So I'm fascinated to see how that goes. And then they're going to run an option offense, and then they're going to run like this is going to feel like run and shoot, like run, throw deep, run, throw deep, and take those chances down the field because Lance does have a big arm, and Arizona can play. Now Arizona likes to play quarters, so it might be harder to get those deeper shots, but I mean, if they play quarters all day against Trey Lance, he's going to run for 200 yards against them. And that's going to be a good way to keep Kyler Murray off the field. So really fascinated to see how that goes. San Francisco has underwhelmed me literally every game that I've watched them this year. I thought that they were going to be good. They do not seem good. They seem like, we talked about it earlier, good teams squeeze out bad teams towards the end of the game. And it felt like in this particular game, Seattle ended up squeezing out the Niners, and I thought it would have been the other way around because Seahawks offense is solid, but the defense is not particularly great. So we'll see. I'm curious. San Francisco is 13 in total DVOA. That matches their their 2-2 record. They are 7th in offense. That feels very high. They're 16th in defense. I'm more concerned about their offense than I am their defense. But again, it may change completely now. So for Dave, they're 12th, which is they're 13th now. Okay, well, that is. Seattle, 4th in offense, 25th in defense. That feels about right. And then Arizona, we talked about 6th and 6th. They're 3rd overall. And the Rams are 2nd in offense, 20th in defense for 5th overall. Okay. So San Francisco very clearly way behind in DVOA in that particular division. So we'll see how that ends up turning out. Trey Lance is going to need time. Like, it's going to be fun to watch him play because dude is going to be a beast with his legs, and he's going to have a cannon whenever they let him use it. But look for this to be a very run heavy game against Arizona. And by the way, we talked about this before, and I don't want to get too far ahead because we'll talk about this in the preview show tomorrow night. But Arizona is terrible in run discipline. They in gap discipline, they are bad. They are pretty much flow to the ball in any way that you can get to it. And Shanahan will eat them alive if they are not more disciplined. So fascinated to see how that one goes. Gabe, Lance will have a game plan which will be good. Yeah, I mean, I think we still have to respect Shanahan as an offensive coordinator. But yeah, I think Lance is going to help Shanahan be creative and focused in a game plan. And I don't feel like that's what we've gotten from Shanahan. I feel like Shanahan's been a little more erratic in terms of what he's tried to do versus what we've seen from him last year, for example. So fantastic. All right, last game of the night. We're going to get out of here. It is 10:15. We are going to get done by 10:30. So Las Vegas and Los Angeles Chargers. If I hadn't have missed so bad on the Miami Indianapolis game, I would literally like get up and walk around my room to take a victory lap on the Chargers, because I've been trying to tell everyone for weeks the Chargers are for real, and it's awesome to finally see everyone jumping on the bandwagon. I mean, if we're real about it, this team is an illegal shift penalty away from beating the Cowboys and being 4-0 against Washington, Dallas, KC, and Vegas. Like, that's an impressive slate of games. Washington, whatever. But Dallas, KC, and Vegas, three of what looks like three of the best teams in the NFL. That's impressive. And they had one illegal shift that ended up costing them a touchdown against the Cowboys, and they probably still should have won that game too. Brandon Staley is calling a terrific game every week. His offense is loaded. They have a phenomenal young QB. They have weapons that complement each other on offense. The O-line is decent. They can run the ball. They can pass the ball. The defense is dynamic, adaptable to every week. They can adapt to pretty much any team in the NFL, it feels like. They have great play callers on both sides of the ball so far. Like, this is one of the more complete teams I've seen in the NFL, and provided they stay healthy, they look like a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Like, it may be too early to say that, but I've thought that from the first 2 or 3 games that I've watched the Chargers play. And this goes back to last year. I thought even with Anthony Lynn, I thought this looked like a good football team. I didn't think they were particularly well coached, but I thought they were a good football team just by the players in the roster and the way that they played and some of the things that they were able to do that happened outside of what the coaching staff was asking them to do. I think now they have a good football team and a good coaching staff. I've watched every one of their games this season, and they just have so many ways to beat you on both offense and defense. I'm fascinated because they get Cleveland this week, and that's going to be another good test. And then they get Baltimore. So their schedule to start the year is pretty brutal, and they'll get a softer stretch in the middle after the bye week, which should set them up for an end-of-year push into the playoffs. But then they're going to get KC, Houston, Denver, and Vegas to finish out the year. So couple games in there that they should win, a couple games in there they might lose. They may even sit some people against Vegas. We'll see. I'm in love with everything about the Chargers. Consider me the president of the Brandon Staley fan club because this guy is just so thoughtful about everything that he does, and he passes that along to his team. I thought it was great this week. Bosa said that Staley does a good job educating the team, and I love that because that's what coaching is, right? Like at its core, coaching is teaching. No matter what level you should be focused, like no matter what level of coaching you're at, you should be focused on educating your players. Good coaching is teaching your players how to play smart, teach them how to train, teach them how to prepare, and then teaching them what the other team wants to do and what to look for. Like I'm in love with this whole team right now. This is my team for the rest of the year because I'm so angry with the Bucs until they get their shit together on offense. In terms of play calling, I'll just ride this Chargers train until the Bucs figure out what the hell they want to do. And here's the thing: Vegas didn't come in playing poorly. They ended up playing really well in this game, I thought. Or they played well for them, but the Chargers team is just tough to match up against. Like Carr played really well. He continues to prove that he can sling it. Gruden is still he showed again. He's terrific at dialing up big plays whenever they absolutely need it. They got a couple, but again, they just couldn't sustain. Like they had a couple big plays, took advantage of a couple matchups, but they just could not sustain that particular level of play against a team like the Chargers. Gabe, also very nice for Chargers to get an O-line also. Yeah, they're good. They're good. 4 out of 5 positions. Worried about Storm Norton at right tackle. The Chargers have a home field advantage. I will say no, simply because they've got to play the West twice in the AFC. But you could say that about KC too. So it's hard to say. Like to me, it's KC, Chargers. I gotta put Cleveland up there too, man. I'm so impressed by what what Cleveland did. That defense looks phenomenal. Buffalo. Yeah, so Chargers, Chiefs, Buffalo. Here's the thing. Buffalo's got an easy schedule. I don't think anybody tops Buffalo because Buffalo's schedule is so easy the rest of the year. I mean, it's bad. It's cake. Buffalo and the Bucs actually both benefited from having really easy schedules this year because of the way that things worked out. And the teams that won last year and then them ending up not being great. So, Buffalo, for example, they lost to Pitt But then they got Miami, not great. Washington, not good. Houston, not good. They get KC this week, which we talked about. Tennessee looks like a middling team. Miami again, not good. Jacksonville, not good. Jets, not good. Colts, not good. New Orleans, who knows? New England, Tampa Bay, okay, they're good. That's the only hard game they have all year is Tampa Bay, by the way. Then they get Carolina, which I think Buffalo is better than. New England again, of course. And then they get Atlanta and the New York Jets to finish out the year. What a cake-ass schedule that they get to finish out the year, Buffalo. And again, they're one of those good teams. Like, I think that's the one thing that I want to highlight before we go tonight. I continue to mention this every week, but I want to spend just a second on it. Like, we can look at a lot of the matchups from week to week. Oh, hang on, let me get to Gabe's question first. Let's see. If they got the 1 seed, they would have home field in their games with the crowd. I think Buffalo gets it just because their schedule, like I said. All right, so the one thing I want to highlight. Every week we talk about this or mention it kind of in passing, and we've talked about it a bunch tonight, or at least mentioned it pretty on a few different games that happened this week. Like, we talk about matchups and how important and critical they are to the impact of the game from week to week. And they're absolutely very, very important to who wins and who loses. But every week we also have a few games where we just talk about the overall talent level of a team and the coaching of the teams. And every week there's an example of where the better team just kind of sustains a level of play longer than the weaker team can. Like, you may see a team like Carolina keep up with the Cowboys at first, but then the Cowboys just hit a different gear and just keep that pushing, and Carolina just kind of fades toward the end of the game, right? I think you see that with the Bucks at a good amount of time. The Chiefs are a great example of it. They continuously put the screws to other teams to see if they can keep up with the pressure, especially whenever it's in Kansas City. They put the screws to them and say, hey, you're in a hostile environment. Can you keep up with our offense? And they make adjustments and make sure that the other team has to keep making adjustments while still trying to sustain. And good teams adjust and eventually just squeeze the life out of lesser opponents. The Bills have dominated and squeezed the will to play out of their opponents the last few weeks. The Chargers did it this week, and it showed that the Raiders just couldn't keep pace. The Cowboys proved to me in week 1 they were legit when they kept pace with for a whole game with the Bucks. Like, I was expecting the Bucks to eventually kind of squeeze out the Cowboys there, but they end up having to kick a last-second field goal. Tom Brady has to work his Tom Brady magic and kick a last-second field goal. That told me, hey, these Cowboys, they're for real. If they can maintain in a game against the Bucks like this, they're going to be all right. The Indy-Miami game this week, while I don't think either one of them are terrific teams, like, it made me rethink some of my notions about both of these teams, because it felt like Indy just took control and never let up, and Miami didn't have the wherewithal to be able to maintain against them. And I would say that that's normally not the case, and it's not in the DNA of a Brian Flores team to not be able to fight and maintain. So I'm curious if this was like an anomaly or if Miami's just not good. And based on this week, it feels like they're just not good. And it's disappointing because I thought that they played fairly well last year and they had an opportunity to be successful this year. But Jacoby Brissett just doesn't look like the guy. The Chiefs, again, great example, probably the best example that I can give of how they squeeze teams out. The Pats for years before have done the same thing. Like, teams just cannot live up to the Pats' just continued pressure throughout an entire game. And I don't mean pressure as in like blitzing and pass rush and stuff like that. I'm talking about overall pressure of, can you perform and not make mistakes throughout the entirety of a game? And the NFL is a lot about talent and matchups, but it's also about sustainability of a team. So that's one of the things I'm going to be looking for this week. And I think that I missed last week of can good teams just squeeze out bad teams and end up covering covering the spread basically is what happens whenever that happens. Like I said, Dallas did it to Carolina. It's one of the things I learned this week. Dallas did it to Carolina. Chargers covered because they did it to the Raiders. Ravens did it to the Broncos. Pack did it to the Steelers. Cardinals did it to the Rams. Like they punched them in the mouth and then put a chokehold on them or put them in a vice grip and said, "Hey, you're not getting out unless you tap out." And it felt like the Rams tapped out through one point of that game. So yeah, that's going to be one of the things that I'm looking at this year or this week to see like who is really playing well right now and feels like they're just going to be in a different place in the fourth quarter than some of these other teams. And those are the teams that I'm going to be looking for to cover the points. So B. Eden, welcome in. Glad you're in. Being elite for 60 minutes is tough. Yes, it is. But we've been elite for 3.5 hours, people. I appreciate all of you guys coming in. Gabe, you've been here since the start. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for your participation. It's always more fun when you guys talk and ask questions. I know we got Simsy in here earlier asking some fantasy questions. Hopefully that works out for him because I'll feel really bad if it doesn't. But yeah, appreciate it, B. And good to see you, man. Good to see you come in. That is going to be it for our week 4 recap show. Thank you guys so much. I don't know if there's any other questions that you guys want to talk about. Any games you want to hit? Anything from this week that stood out or surprised you that you potentially want to discuss? I think I think this week was one of the more surprising weeks for me. I again didn't do well and didn't do well in the picks, ended up under 500, just slightly though. I think. And so for us, it was very much a, for us, for me, it was very much a, what did I miss? And a lot of it was, don't be afraid to pick what you know about teams. Right. So there was a lot of games last week, and Carolina and Dallas was one of them where I'm going, I think Carolina's pretty good. I know Dallas is really good. So I just need to kind of stick with that and not let the schedule get in the way, which is going to be one of the things that I'm looking at, this week. All right, guys, let's see. Let's find somebody good to send you guys over to. Who's this? What are they doing? Let's see what we're doing here. All right. So first of all, let me get some out. I need to be better about outro music. Like one of these days, I'm going to get this whole production thing down. Problem is that I'm certainly not there yet. Oh, I never even turned my desktop off. All right. Guys, thank you all so much for being in. Really appreciate it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send you guys over to, I think we've rated him before, but Gold Glover is always a good time. And he's also one of the few guys that I follow that's on right now within one of the things of the Beaten later, bro. Thank you for the stream. Said I came in late, work when a bit late. Hey, brother, I appreciate you coming in at all. Anytime you can spend with me, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming in. Don't be afraid to hit me up on Twitter. With any questions that you guys have. If your name is different on here than it is on Twitter, I'll never know. So I'd love to connect the two if at all possible. So don't be afraid to DM me, hit me up in my mentions. Really love having conversations with you guys. Anybody that spends time with me in here is going to get priority on Twitter. That's where I'm at most of the day and most of the time whenever I'm doing work. So thank you guys so much. Let me do this. Oh, I can do it from here. I'm smart. Oh, let's not do that. I gotta mute that. All right, guys. Beaten, have a good one, brother. Gabe, thank you so much. For everybody else who just kind of hung out in chat, appreciate you guys hanging out too. Please feel free next time around. don't hesitate to jump in, ask a question. That's all we're here for. Everybody's nice and lovely in this chat, so don't be afraid. Oh, where'd we go? Here we go. Okay. All right, everybody. I am going to send you guys over to Gold Glover. Appreciate you guys so much. Thank you all. Have a terrific night. Thanks, everyone.